What's that?
I was bored yesterday.
Yeah? What'd you do?
Found every neighbor out.
Oh, well, that was nice of you.
Found you out, Gary.
Okay.
You are live.
The evening, I come home and
His wife come
I
running
go,
out before you.
I go, oh, okay.
You ready?
Wow,
Oh,
very
sure.
good job. Okay. Oh, surprise.
Call this meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge of allegiance, moment of silence, and a private prayer. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Robbins.
Here.
Commissioner Rushton.
Present.
Chairman Bonick.
Here.
Commissioner Wessel is absent, but he's on your screen to participate, but no voting. Commissioner Stonesboro is
On our way.
Should be late.
on the way. Commissioner Albert. Here. Commissioner Lautner. Present.
All right, and thank you for that. Then we have approval of agenda. We will delete number 6B. You would. And as a notice also in number 4, that would be one motion for those 3 items, I-1, 2, 3. And we can also, at the Grand Rapids Band, 2% allocations to that in one motion. If we wish.
And Mr. Chairman, the report on the Leelanau County housing stats. Unfortunately, our presenter has a health issue this morning, so he apologizes. And we'll try to get him on.
Reschedule.
Yeah, so he apologized. He contacted Mr. Roberts and I this morning. He's got a bad head cold.
So that would be removed from the agenda as well.
Keep going.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the agenda as amended.
Support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The motion passes. Commissioner Alwan. Thank you. So then that would bring us to public comment. Is there any public comment at this time? Please. State
Hello.
your name.
Peter Lebo, 8210 Stuck Lake Road. Just wanted to thank the commissioners again for all their hard work and all the diligence that you guys go through. I really think that you guys are underappreciated. And I'm very thankful to have you guys devoting all your time and energy to be great community members. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and then we move on to commissioner comment. Seeing none, then we'll move on to communications, proclamations, and presentations. And first up is the administrator's
All right,
update.
thank you. I'll keep my comments fairly short today because much of what I'm going to talk about is on the agenda. But I want to just say thank you for allowing Gwen and I to go to the NACO conference in Washington. It was a very educational experience. I'm sure you want to share some views, but each of you have a packet in front of you here. And what I did is I put together a packet of information of items that I thought you would find valuable, that you can read at your own leisure. There'll be no tests given afterwards. But then there's a package here, several brochures on ARPA funding, and I think we're in great shape with there's some information about substance abuse, community block grants, childcare issues, mental illness, and veteran services. And then some of the highlights of the speakers that were there live in person were U.S. Senator John Corwin from Texas, EPA Administrator Michael Regan, USDA Secretary Tom Valek, Secretary of Interior Tommy Boudreau, Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, Representative Liz Cheney, U.S. Senator Martin Hemrick from New Mexico, U.S. Senator Bill Cassidy from Louisiana, and the keynote speaker was President Biden at the event. So it was very educational and informative, and a lot of good information in here. One thing I did learn, I think we are in the forefront on the ARPA funding. There was a lot of questions from people who want to know how they could spend it and so forth. And I'm sure there'll be a second round. Everyone's saying there's more money coming. There'll be some federal funds that I think we could apply for, maybe for a broadband project. Everyone's saying the money's there. It's just a matter of when they'll be allocated and how and what will be the process. So I think that was really worthwhile. But it was a great experience, I think, especially for a brand new commissioner. And you want to add anything?
So I have to add, after what you said, that one of the impressions I came home with was we're a really small county. The money was doled out by population. And a lot of those people were talking about how they were going to allocate their $200 million and their $80 million.
Yeah.
And they'd say, well, how much are you getting? Well, we have 4 total. Now, the flip side of that might be that when they're doling out money for more internet broadband coverage, we have an even better reason why we need additional funding, because we didn't get that big tranche of money. So maybe, I don't know, we can slip that inside with some, because we didn't get enough to do our complete job, and we should need more. So maybe that'll make it. It was an honor to have, as President Biden said, the whole damn cabinet. He said, I dragged the whole damn cabinet out here to talk to you. And one of the things that he said was, I was a county councilman at the beginning of my career. And what I know is if the money only goes to the legislature, we all know what happens. We still haven't seen that money. So he said, this is the very first time the money's gone straight to the counties. He said, that's because I know, I've been there. So it was an honor. I think I learned the most going to the sessions on housing, how people are dealing with housing. We shared that the other day. What a huge issue it is for everyone, and how counties are taking the lead and realizing it's our job to use the taxpayers' dollar to make this a place where our families can raise their children. And so they build housing. They're using the money to make sure that affordable housing, attainable housing is being built in their counties. So they are not just sitting back and they're taking action. So I appreciate being able to go. I appreciate that honor and that gift from the taxpayers, and do my best to use that experience.
And the clerk, I want to say thank you for approving that furniture, office furniture last month. It's been ordered. It should be here the second week of April and will be installed. So hopefully at our April meeting, we can give you a tour. So you can take a look at the new furniture for the clerk's office, the finance office, and this conference room. So hopefully in April, at our regular meeting, we can give you a little tour of the furniture.
I need to add, since he brings up the word tour, Chet's a great tour guide. I'm sure you all know that. You've all been on
I've been to Washington quite a few times.
conferences with Chet. He's quite the tour guide. You've got a third career going here, Chet.
I see you broke the rules by not wearing your mask inside. You didn't get arrested for not wearing your mask inside,
I wore my mask inside. Everybody.
except for the photo then.
Yeah, actually, in the district of Washington,
We were outdoors.
by
Not the
mandate,
one.
by mandate, you have to wear a mask. The hotel had a COVID compliance officer. And in the District of Washington, every coffee shop, every restaurant you go to, every public building, you have to show them your vaccination card. You cannot get in the door of a Starbucks without showing the card. So that was a different experience. Back to the comment about being a great tour guide, I had helped because I had Mr. Butler's grandson with me as my tour guide, and he did a great job.
Yes, we spent the afternoon. with
Yes.
him. He's very nice.
Very delightful young man. Thank you. Tyler.
Thank you. Yes, and that would bring us to Bay Area Transportation Update. We have Eric over.
Good morning.
Morning.
I think, fantastic, look at that. I love it when technology works, it's great.
We have a magic wand here.
You do?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Laurel.
What was that?
It's called Laurel.
Oh, excellent. Well, thank you for letting us come and share our annual update here regarding the Bay Area Transportation Authority and what public transit is doing in our community. Next slide, please. There we go. Fantastic. Beta is well represented in the room today, actually. So I'm Eric Lingard, Director of Communications and Development. We've got Kelly Dunham, our Executive Director as well. As far as current board members on Beta's board, Commissioner Robbins is on our board currently. John Samavilla also represents Leelanau County. He is appointed to Beta's board. And then Heather Harris Brady, who is also an Empire resident, is a member at large on Beta's board as well. And then previous commissioners who have also served on Beta's board too. So we've got good Beta representation today, and we thank you for your service and being part of helping guide the direction for Beta. Next slide, please. So what does our current service footprint look like in Leelanau County? We currently have both our fixed route, which are our village loop routes that make connections from Traverse City out into the villages, and our Village Link service running in Leelanau County. Village Link is our dial-a-ride, our demand response, where you call up and schedule a ride, and it connects you door to door in the county, or could connect you to a route to bring you in. Right now, our Village Loop routes just run Monday through Friday, where our Village Link service runs 7 days a week right now, which is new since we've had to reduce some of our services on the weekend due to staffing mainly. And we'll get into that a little bit more, but that's one of our number one challenges. And many businesses in the community are impacted by the same thing, just not having enough staff to meet the demand. But we are covering all of Leelanau County, and the next slide will show what ridership looks like. So ridership in Leelanau County actually has gone up year over year for us, which is a shining point. We saw increases both on our fixed route and on our Village Link side. Since we do have Village Link service now running 7 days a week, of course, you'll see ridership going up there because that's more applicable. But in total, we gave about 18,500 rides in 2021 in Leelanau County, which was great. Next slide, please. So some other things, just sort of recapping to 2021, we're continuing to make our fleet more greener and environmentally friendly. Over 40% of our fleet now is propane powered. It helps us to reduce the cost of our wear and tear on our vehicles. We also have a propane fueling station on site at Beta, which helps us control our fuel costs too, because we're able to buy it in bulk. And we get rebates as well for using propane, especially with gas prices kicking up a little bit. It's nice to have that alternative fuel source for us. The only challenge that we've had recently, and you've probably seen this too, as the automotive industry is experiencing bringing new vehicles on due to semiconductor shortages and things like that. We've had a hard time getting new vehicles in the door. We've got orders through the state contracts with the state of Michigan and are just waiting. They're trying to do residential vehicles first. Commercial vehicles are lower on the line, but we will continue to bring in more fuel efficient and more propane powered vehicles across our fleet as the inventory becomes available. Our customer satisfaction numbers are doing well as well. People continue to be satisfied with our service. And then another shining point that we've seen a positive of is our link on demand service that we have running. When I presented to you guys in March of last year, we were in pilot phase. We had about 6-7 months of link on demand in our pocket. This is a service where kind of operates like an Uber or Lyft, if you guys are familiar with that. So you can use an app, a website, or call in and request a bus in real time to come pick you up. We were piloting it. It has since become a permanent part of our service delivery, and we're looking at expanding it farther into other regions of our service area, because it seems to be a model that riders are very appreciative having, being able, instead of having to call 2 weeks in advance to request a bus, you can call one up immediately and have it come and pick you up, type of thing. So it puts more flexibility in people's transportation patterns and their ability to book rides. Yeah,
Can I ask a question about that while you're on it?
sure.
How often are you picking up people to take them to their job locally?
So I would say the majority of our riders are using Beta for either work, medical appointments, or grocery and health and wellness activities. Those are the main things. I don't have a specific percentage of how many are going to and from employment specifically, but those are the main reasons that use Beta for transit. Yeah. The next slide will have a showcase of how we've seen the link on demand ridership just go up and up and up. And we'll continue to explore that as rolling out that technology further. Next slide. So things in Leelanau County, the way that Beta is helping out in whatever capacities we can. We continue to provide transportation services for support of seasonal workforce, for festival activities. We had a shuttle put to the Polka Fest this last summer, and it took people back and forth. We'll be doing that again here now that they're in August. They've shifted their date to when that'll be. We work closely with some of the businesses that have seasonal workforces that bring in foreign workers or seasonal workers that don't have transportation to and from their jobs. There was a mention of affordable housing. So what Glen Arbor is doing, for example, Cherry Republic, Leelanau Vacation Rentals, Anderson's Market, the Homestead, Crystal River Outfitters, they're actually buying or renting homes in Maple City and locations that they can afford, and they're putting their workers there. And then we're helping get them from those locations into Glen Arbor and then back as needed for work throughout the summer.
That's what I was,
Okay, so an example like that.
thank you for mentioning.
And then, we also support transportation as well. A number of Leelanau Montessori students utilize Beta to get to and from school every day. We try to keep our open communication for making service improvements, working with entities like Leelanau County Senior Services and April Messiah's group. We'll be rolling out new technologies here, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. And then throughout the pandemic and continuing throughout 2021, we've provided essential transportation. We've kept rolling the whole time for medical appointments and all those type of things. So those are some of the things that we're provide transportation support for in Leelanau County. Next slide. Bike and Ride continues to be one of our signature services to provide different mobility and alternative transportation. It's a popular service. If any of you guys have ever used it before, you could ride either the Sleeping Bear Heritage Trail or the Leelanau Trail back and forth between Sutton's Bay and Traverse City, or along the Sleeping Bear Dunes area. And Beta's got vehicles that can load bikes either on the front or inside, and will move people back and forth. And we saw just over 1,200 rides as far as that goes with bikes. And in total, this program has provided over 14,000 bike trips since its launch. So it's been very popular. Next slide, please. The other thing that Beta's board has encouraged us to do is get more engaged at the township level and with the villages and communities we serve. One of the ideas that was brought up was engaging with the villages and encouraging them to get exposure on the vehicles, especially vehicles that go to and from that location. So we're piloting this with Sutton's Bay. We worked with the chamber and the library and a couple other folks, and they submitted some pictures that we're going to put on the side of a beta bus and use it to promote the village of Sutton's Bay and encourage folks to go back and forth. And so we're starting this in Sutton's Bay, and we're going to try other places as well, Kingsley and Interlochen, and have promotion of how you can take the bus to get to and from those locations, to get some exposure for the villages as well. Next slide, please. So what's on deck for 2022? One of the main things that is in alignment that the beta board is going to be conducting here that is going to kick off here in March is a transit master plan process. This is going to look at our service delivery from top to bottom and look at what the vision is for public transportation in our community for the next 5 years and into the next 10 years. It will look at types of service delivery, what the community needs are, what our resources are, being mindful of what staffing levels we have and how can we meet those needs based on the number of folks that we have. And that will really guide our direction here as we move forward, and what the pandemic has done to kind of shift the focus of what public transit looks like in our community. The other thing is technology. Incorporating more and more technology into public transportation. We've heard from our riders and from our staff, the easier that you can make it to use public transit, the more conducive it will be for people to consider it. We have some RFPs out right now to bring in some new technology and kind of do a whole reset of our onboard technology and then our user-facing technology. And what that kind of looks like is tablets inside buses, so that a number of you guys use tablets here, one tablet interface for the drivers to kind of interact with for their rides and for their trips. Also real-time tracking for riders, so they can see when the bus is coming to their stop, so they can know instantly how long they need to wait for the next bus, and just kind of make it easier to navigate the world of public transit. We will still have the printed schedules and brochures. You can still call and request your ride for those who are a little technology shy, but we'll continue to bring that in to increase efficiencies across the board. Next slide, please. A new operations center. This is another big one that's on the horizon for us. And kind of shared the same update at the same time last year as the wheels of progress turned slowly in some cases. Just a reminder for those who aren't familiar, Beta received funding from the state and federal level to build a new operations center at the corner of Lafreniere and Hammond Roads in Garfield Township. But this project is more than just an operations center. We are partnering with TC Housing. It will have workforce housing units into it as well. Habitat for Humanity will also be building up to 15 units on part of the parcel that is designated for this project. It will also have a state-of-the-art childcare facility and a cafe along with a transfer center and a park and ride lot, so people can leave their vehicles and have a direct shot to use public transit to get to work, to medical appointments and things like that. So where are we in the process of this new facility? We got approvals through the Garfield Township Planning Commission in February, go in front of the Garfield Township Commission here at the end of March. Site work, additional funding will be gathered for the housing side of the project here throughout 2022. And then into 2023, site work will begin, and hopefully we'll get into our new operations center sometime in 2024. It will really help consolidate Beta as a whole. If you've driven down the Cass corridor at all, we've got our admin facility. We also rent property behind us to park buses. We rent property across the street. We lease property across the street from a Bay Motors to park vehicles. And then we have an ancillary facility down the street. What this will do, we'll have all of Beta under one roof. and allow vehicles also to be parked inside as well, which will definitely help on days like yesterday when you've got snow coming like crazy and or on sub-degree days where we're jumping 7 buses and things like that, to have a temperature controlled environment that will have all of our vehicles and stuff in one location. Next slide, please. The other thing that will be on the radar for 2022, Beta's millage renewal will be in November, most likely of this year. We will be renewing at a lower rate from what we had 5 years ago. And Beta's current millage will expire at the end of 2022. So we'll be on the ballot here in November. Next slide, please.
So before you go on, why don't you just go with even year villages? Why would you look at another one next year? Is that what am I reading it, or you're not?
So
Or is that just your?
no, the max that Beta can request is a 5-year renewal. And so we would look for either a 5 or a 4-year to stay on an even year rotation. And that's something that Beta's board is looking at as well. Yep.
Even year.
Mhm.
rotation,
Yep.
not a 4-year. Okay,
Yep.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's a good question. So as I mentioned, one of our number one, I would say our number one challenge is staffing. We are looking to bring on as many folks as we can. We're probably about 40% lower in our staffing than what we are when we're at full service levels, mainly in the driver area. And so that has been a challenge for us because ridership, demand for ridership and increased services is there, and we just don't have enough people currently to meet that. So we've got robust hiring plans in place. We're offering $15,000 signing bonuses. If you move to the next slide,
1,500.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry.
Did
Did I say 15,000?
Yeah.
15,000 signing bonuses. Come and work for Beta right now.
You just got everybody in the audience.
Come on. Jeez, oh Pete. Up to almost $25 an hour, full and part-time. We're doing everything in our power to recruit that we can. We've got television ads, radio ads, social media, digital, at any hiring fairs that we can, trying to do anything that we can to encourage folks to come and drive for Beta or work for public transit, because I mean, not only is it a good job, but you're giving back to the community when you work for Beta. You're providing an essential service that is needed in our community, and when you work for us, you're part of that solution. So continuing to bang on every door and look under every rock that we can. If you know anyone interested in working for Beta, we're definitely we're doing like same day interviews when we can in those particular cases. Yeah.
Question, now that we're talking on hiring, I thought of something the other day. Have you guys ever looked at, since we're kind of separate, we are separate from Grand Traverse County, like we have the 2 loops out here, like making satellites, keeping buses out of Suttons Bay and Maple City. Maybe we could hire some local drivers out here that probably maybe drive, but they don't want to drive all the way to Traverse to drive.
We're actually looking at that right now about, parking the vehicle out here. We're also looking at some other things, maybe having a propane fueling station out here too, so that it makes it even more conducive to have the vehicle out here so that it can refill. And maybe it'll be an incentive for Leelanau County residents to just drive to Suttons Bay or to Lake Leelanau to grab the bus versus having to come all the way into Traverse City. Yeah, that's a great idea. And we did do that previously a number of years ago, and kind of shied away from it, but we're looking at any opportunity to kind of do that kind of stuff. Yeah. Great.
I had a question too. You mentioned propane again. When you use propane, how do you pay the road tax?
I don't know if there is a road tax for.
And I don't think there is.
Yeah.
So I mean, that really hurts it's the same thing with the electric vehicles. We're getting less and less road tax because people are going to alternatives.
Yeah, I don't know what type of I don't know, I don't think a road tax is applied to propane when it's used for fueling. Yeah, it's a little bit different. And then the last slide is just some of our employee satisfaction numbers with working at Beta and things like that. So that's the update that I have. I'll answer any questions that you have.
Well, thank you all for being here. And I think it's just amazing to look at the difference, looking back 5-6 years ago, and the innovative plans and changes that Beta has made is amazing. So congratulations on that. Had a couple of questions, actually about 5. If looking at your satisfaction, those are excellent satisfaction survey numbers from the people who take the bus service. Did you take a look at what were the dissatisfaction? What is it that they think they're missing and want to see?
The number one thing is our service levels. A number of riders wish that we had more service out there or service back to the levels that we had pre-pandemic. That's the number one thing that they're asking for.
That's a nice dissatisfaction.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard because we want to be able to provide that level of transportation support.
Can I just clarify your question?
Wait after she gets done.
Well, no, go ahead.
Because it was on what she just asked.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, is that people asking for loop instead of link in those areas?
Both,
Okay.
both.
No, that's good.
Yep.
Yeah, you mentioned different events. You can call Beta and arrange. I'm assuming this is how it works. You call and arrange for service specifically for that event. What are the type of charges to local units or whoever's putting on the event for that kind of service?
So usually, for example, like for the Cedar Polka Fest, it's a sponsorship trade of services that I work out with them as a marketing deal. So it's the level of transportation support, and they promote Beta as an option and make us a sponsor of the event. For smaller one-off activities, we just charge the fare usually. That is as a group trip request, whatever the fare is per person to drive for that ride.
Your link service, which is great. How does that work? I mean, if just one person needs a ride in an area, that's fine, or do you group them?
We try to group if possible. Yeah, with the Village Link service, we'll look and see if there's somebody coming from Leland and someone coming from, if we could grab someone from Maple City at the same time and bring them kind of in the same direction, we'll do so. Or it could be one-on-one trips, depending on the timing and the need.
That's a great service. And then the bike and ride. Is this part of your regular route service, or is this also a link option?
It is built into our regular loops fixed route service. So we build it in. We put special buses on it that have bike carrying capabilities in them. So they have bike racks installed inside of the buses, and then we put them onto our current service delivery. All of our buses have bike racks on them. So if you have a bike, you can utilize that service. We just make the special bike and ride service during the summertime.
I think congratulations on thinking to put a childcare facility as a part of the facility. I know that that's according to the Bureau of Child Regulation, that's not a possibility right now, but I think there's legislation moving through, it may have gotten through to make that a possibility, to include it in an area that is not isolated as a standalone facility. So good, innovative plans. Thank you.
Thank you.
So you mentioned Link picking somebody up in Leland. So you will vary the route because Link doesn't show itself.
So Link will go anywhere in Leelanau County, the Village Link service. So we will send a bus to Leland, to Northport, to Empire, and that is a door to destination service. Yep.
So the route that you show for Link here is just what?
It's all of Leelanau County for.
So you've got this route shown on.
So the routes are loop routes. Those are fixed routes. So they only have set times and schedules and stops that they follow.
Okay, so 11 on that. Glen Arbor
Mhm.
and all that. You have loop service to those areas as well.
We do, yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
You had limited link, and so I thought they would.
Commissioner Wessel, did you have any questions? Thank you. I just wondered about, you say you have trouble getting, you're down 40% on your, is it bus drivers mostly? And is it the matter of getting the CDL?
That is one of the challenges,
I
yes.
mean, do you allow people who do medical marijuana or recreational marijuana get a CDL and drive?
You cannot get a CDL if you test positive for that substance.
So with that, I mean, the Michigan allowing that is probably restricted, because I know people, excavators are having trouble getting people with CDLs, and bus drivers for the schools are having trouble. So, I mean, it seems like that's created a dirge of people who are employable as drivers.
That is correct.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much, Eric.
Thank you.
That would bring us then to Leelanau Dam Authority. Mr. Christensen here.
Good morning. We're actually getting into the digital world. Our new hire, Colin Osi, has drawn us into the digital world, and I now have an iPad, so I can view documents with you also. So anyway.
Did you kick and scream all the way to?
It's interesting. We have a staff meeting. We have new employees, 3 new employees. They have a conversation, and Buzz and Karen and I listen, and we don't participate a whole lot, but it's really good to have technology coming to us and being at the district. But anyway, Dam Authority, we're running smoothly with the dam. We're going out to bids on the ladder system, so that's in the budget, and that'll be coming down the pike. We're holding at the winter level right now as far as lake level. We're iced up, and Jerry's watching carefully to monitor on a daily basis. Cameras are working nicely. I went down yesterday and we fired them up on Jerry's computer. It's a very, very nice thing to be able to look and see what's actually going there from his office. It's a really good thing. Sensors are working properly, and that's good. Safety devices in place, and it allowed Jerry to do some maintenance this last fall, greasing the bearings. Other than that, we're looking forward to the budget process for 2023. We're looking at walkway repair, which is the foot walkway bridge that goes across the top of the dam area. The wooden aspect of it is showing its age, so we're looking at replacing that. And then roof repair for the control room. There is a very minor leak that's kind of been on and off over time, and we're looking at addressing that. So.
Yes, thank you. So the wooden bridge that public can walk across the top of the dam, is this the bridge you're talking about?
Correct. Mhm.
Okay, is that our responsibility or the hotel's responsibility?
When we built the dam, we repositioned it and constructed it, and it's on our property. So it's my take that it's our responsibility.
Okay. Yes, I remember that, but I thought there was an agreement, but we can check into that.
Yeah.
Because they also wanted it. It's really mostly it's also the public's benefit to be able to walk across the top of the dam. We should check into that.
Yeah, it's an access for people going back and forth from the hotel for sure. Otherwise, they'd have to walk around, and it's been there historically.
Right.
So anyway, that's kind of my take on that.
Any other questions? Commissioner, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to talk about, I see that you're on the agenda today for dam inspection and the appraisal, proposed appraisal. Help me out. I do realize that under law, the dam has to be inspected
Every 3 years.
So,
Mhm.
However, I'm a little confused on appraisal. What's the purpose of this appraisal?
I can address that.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Our insurance agent is requesting every dam in the state, it's MMRA,
Oh, okay.
because of what happened in the Midland area.
Sanford, like,
Yeah, they want to make sure, so every dam in Michigan has to have an appraisal value. Appraisal value.
So it's not necessarily construction and design
No,
appraisal?
no, it's the value of the current value of the dam.
Okay.
The way they're going about it is to do a replacement cost estimate. And they're not approaching any depreciation factors. It's not something they can do.
Okay.
So that's what they said in
So
there.
this is something that the state now has started.
Correct, yeah,
Yeah, this-
we have to, it's a mandated thing.
Okay,
Let me just update, when we met with our insurance agent last summer, this is a mandate for all units of government that have dams.
okay.
They have to have on record and appraised value.
Makes sense to me. But historically, I haven't seen an appraisal
No.
done. That's why I was asking.
This is the first time.
Yeah.
So those are the questions.
I do think that it's illegal. It's an unfunded mandate.
As usual.
The commission here is thinking of restructuring the dam authority.
Uh-huh.
Do you have, an opinion about that concerning restructuring it?
I guess whatever makes the most sense from your point of view is fine from my point of view, whatever you feel is the appropriate direction. It's good to have folks involved with the dam authority that have some investment in it and have interest in it going forward. And the pathway to pass knowledge on to the next group is important.
Are you dissatisfied with the way it's structured now?
I wouldn't say that I am. It's interesting to have more members. At times, it's been a little challenging to get a quorum. Other than that, it's functional. You get more opinions. Yeah, it's different than it was.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Okay, and that would bring us to our consent agenda. And the purpose of the consent agenda is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one motion without discussion. Any commissioner may ask that any item on the consent agenda be removed, placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such request will be automatically respected and will not need a second. Motion. Commissioner Rushton.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the consent agenda as presented. Say.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Motion passes 6-0. Thank you. And that would then bring us to the Solid Waste Council on recycling contract.
Morning.
Trudy, good morning.
I have 5 items for you this morning. First one, let me state that I reviewed the agenda and A and B should be reversed. So that I missed that catch. So the first one is actually going to be the mobile tire collection. So A starts on page 19 of your packet, and it is an amendment with ERG for the mobile tire collection. little history for you on this. This would be our second year doing a large mobile tire collection event. I was contacted, probably about 18 months to 2 years ago by 2 different supervisors letting me know about these large piles of tires out there and what could we do to start getting rid of them. And I've given you this update before, so I'll keep it short. I contacted the state to find out what they do. There are penalties and so forth, but we are small potatoes compared to what they're working on with other areas of the state. So the possibility of them coming in here and going after the property owners on these large piles is pretty slim. So this is an incentive that we came up with to try to help these property owners get rid of these tires. Some of them inherited them when they inherited the property or they purchased it. And some of them were piles that just started many, many years ago. So we did one last year and we collected over 2,000 tires, and we'd like to do another one this year. We're going to go back and focus on the same tire pile that we partially cleaned up last year. We will add another property owner in if we have room for that pile. So this is an amendment. The homeowner has to pay $1 per tire, just like our other collections. Plus they have to provide manpower. They have to get the labor to get the tires to the semi-trailers. And the funds will come from the property owner, our 2% funds that we receive from the tribe for tire cleanup. And if there's any balance, we'll take it out of our fund 230. There is a $500 per semi-trailer reduction from the contractor if we hold this the day before a hazardous waste collection event, because they can kind of, come up here with the 2 people they need to, plus their trailers, and we did schedule it that way.
Mr. Long.
Well, I would recommend to the Board of Commissioners to approve amendment number 1 to the agreement with mobile collection of tires with ERG Environmental Services at a cost not to exceed $12,800.
I'll second.
Trudy, I appreciate you going over that again, because even though we have heard it before, I think it's really important that the word gets out to the public that we're doing, number 1, our standard tire collections. But number 2, these large pile collections, because it does nothing except good things for our county to get these tires out of there for a number of reasons we've spoken of in the past. And I'm still surprised occasionally you run into someone who has no idea we're doing these tire collections, even for all our advertising. So let's just keep spreading the word, and this is really good. And the other question I have is, how many large piles do you think we have in the county?
Wish I could give you a good answer on that. So we have a list. We have some others on the list that have estimated they have 300 to 500 tires. What we have found is that people underestimate. Yeah, there's a calculator that we use from the state site, and we have the people measure the length, the width, and the height. But then we also have to know about how long were they there, were they settled, are they stacked? It all makes a difference, but it gives us a good estimate. That's how we were able to figure out this site was about 3 times larger than the property owner thought. So right now, I think I have 4 other property owners on the list, but we've had calls from people, and we just need to keep working on it. I keep contacting the farmers too, getting the word out there, because I know there are tires out there. There is one that I'm still trying to track down from a couple years ago. A gentleman called me. Their entire barn is full of tires. And that one I'd really like to get to, because that is a fire hazard.
Yes, for sure.
And we can't figure out where it's at. So we keep putting the word out. We've contacted the fire departments. Word of mouth, we'll figure it out, and we'll let them know, hey, we'd like to help you get these out of the barn and taken care of.
Sure.
Wondering though, what happens to these tires when they collect them? I mean, do we just start creating a pile somewhere else?
They go to a recycling center, and then they're chipped up. The ones that can be reused are reused. Some of them do get landfilled. If there's not much use left to them, they will get landfilled.
Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Motion passes 6-0.
So the second one is an amendment for the collection, which we do for citizens, where they sign up, they'll come to the event. It's going to be held at Glen Lake School this year. They pay the $1 per tire and bring their tires in. The costs have remained the same, and the contractor has given us a reduction if we have to bring in a second semi-trailer for this site. Again, the funds will come from the property owners and then Fund 230, as well as any state grant funds. We've received state grant funds the last 3 years, but I don't have word yet on any awards from the state. As soon as I do, I'll bring that back to you. So if we receive that, we'll put it towards this cost as well.
You have a motion?
I would move to recommend that the Board of Commissioners approve amendment number 1 to the contract between Leelanau County and ERG Environment Services for a one-day scrap tire collection event for residents with a cost not to exceed $10,000 as presented.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Motion passes 6-0. C.
Yes, so C and D are amendments with our contractors for our household hazardous waste, electronics, and shredding collections. We have 4 of them set this year. We set the dates the year before so that we can lock those in with the contractors. They provide these services all around the state, so we know when we want to hold our collections, and we try to get those dates set in very early. So more than a year ago, ERG and CompreNew both contacted me. They were having difficulties through the pandemic, trying to get supplies. Drivers have been a big problem. The cost to get rid of these things has really risen. So I contacted corporate counsel and said, under the terms of our contract, is there anything that we can do? Because they do have the ability to back out of these contracts. And I didn't want them to do that. We have them until the end of 2023. And we have good costs set in here, but these costs are pretty old. We've had amendments over the years, and we are much lower than what other counties in the area are paying for these services. So she advised me to get with both of these individuals and talk with them and see what they were thinking and get it in writing, which I did. Took it to the Solid Waste Council, and then we negotiated back with them on some of the terms. So what you see before you today is an amendment to each one of these contracts to change some of these costs. ERG is the first one under item C. And they provided me also with a copy of their proposal that they gave to Grand Traverse County. Grand Traverse County bid out in November. They had only one response, and that was from ERG. There's fewer companies doing this, and they're pretty locked in. So ERG gave me a copy of that their proposal with Grand Traverse County so I could see their cost. And it was right in line with what they proposed to me. But we negotiated back on some of these and lowered the cost down a little bit more. So ERG was an acceptance of that, and that's what we're asking for today on behalf of Solid Waste Council, is if you are an acceptance to agree to an amendment to the contract to increase some of these costs. That's what we're asking for today. And then item D is the same, except it's with CompreNew on the electronics items. I have reviewed our budget. We have a good fund balance, so we can absorb this. What I'd like to do is leave the 4 collections alone this year. And then next year we can reevaluate and see if we need to cut down to 3 collections, or another option is to reduce the number of people that participate in our collections to bring the cost down a little bit.
Commissioner Soto.
I move to recommend that the Board of Commission approve amendment number 1 to the agreement for household hazardous waste services with ERG Environmental Services. Do you want me to add the other one in at the same time when you second?
Let's do it
Separately?
separately.
Okay, then I'll stop there.
Thank you.
Just a question. Trudy, I know on a household, it's nice to have the shredding added in, but what can we do for those of us who shred documents at home? Just have a lot of debris. You can't put it in the recycling bins because it would jam up the machines. Can you bring it to the hazardous waste recycling?
Let me check on that and I'll get you an answer. And I'll even check and see if we can put it in our recycling if it's bagged up. If it's bagged shredded.
Put in a paper bag.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Let me check on that.
thank you.
Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Motion passes 6-0.
D, actually, for the CompreNew one,
sorry.
same thing. We've modified the cost a little bit for them.
Go ahead.
Recommend that the Board of Commissioner approve amendment number 2 to the agreement for electronics collection service.
Support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Motion passes 6-0. Now we get to E.
Yes, so the last one. The county was awarded $6,000 from the Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians for mattress recycling, and I see it's on your agenda later today. The sole source provider for mattress recycling in our region and actually in the state is Bay Area Recycling for Charities. I checked with some of the other counties in our region who use Bark for this service and got a little information from them. And then I took it to the Solid Waste Council last week and asked them, would they make a recommendation to you that I could pursue working on a sole source contract with them? Andy Gale lives in Solon Township and he owns that company. He's also a member of the Solid Waste Council and he abstained from any action on this. So if you are in support of this, I would move forward to talk with Andy and figure out what we could do. We might do it at current hazardous waste collections if we can figure it out, or we might do it as a separate event. And then once I would have a contract ready, I would bring it back to you for adoption.
What does he do with that?
They recycle about 85% of the materials in the mattresses. Mhm. Yep, there's actually a site, if you go look at it, it shows you how you can pull out the foam and the cloth and the metal and the wood. I mean, they use just about everything. The key to it is we want the mattresses dry. So we don't want people setting them somewhere and getting rained on. We want them kept dry till they come to the event.
I recommend to Board of Commissioners to direct the planning director Gala pursue a sole source contract with Bay Area Recycling for Charities, BART, for mattress recycling and provide a contract for such services to the county board for consideration.
Just a question. Trudy, if this is successful, is this something that you're thinking about doing annually or biannually? If the need is out there?
If the need is there, I think so, yeah.
I do think if people might take a year to
Yeah.
think, oh yeah, I do have something, but.
When you sign up for hazardous waste collections now, I've added a question at the bottom, 2 questions actually. One is how many tires do you have to get rid of? And the other is how many mattresses do you have to get rid of? So we're gathering that information as people sign up for our collections. I do know that it's just much harder to get rid of mattresses, especially since COVID. You know, even if they're in good condition, for sanitary reasons, people don't want them. So you end up having them, it's hard to even give them away, even if they're good.
Good foresight for asking.
Would it be a good idea to say, keep your mattresses dry?
Yeah,
Or something?
yeah, we're
That
gonna-
might be a note to put on there when you ask if they have them.
yes, we will get that information out.
Because that means they can't pick up the ones that left out in the woods.
Right,
Alongside road.
Simple, no wet mattresses accepted.
Right.
Yeah.
Something like that. That'd be good.
you can pick them up, but those ones won't get, they will get landfilled.
Right. Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll get it all cleaned up eventually.
Yeah.
Right, and that brings us to the Leelanau Dam Authority recommendations.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I would move to recommend that the Leelanau County Board of Commissioners waive its bid requirement and approve entering into an agreement with Spicer Group to conduct a triennial inspection of the Leelanau Dam at a cost not to exceed $2,000, pending council review and approval. Those funds to come from our Special Assessment Capital Projects Fund 805.
Second.
Questions? It's a Spicer Group is probably, they're the ones we usually deal with, aren't they?
They've done our last reports.
Right.
And
That's
that's,
why they know the dam, and that's why they.
yeah, they can,
Will this be where he actually dives and looks at it or not?
they recommended, well, actually, they and the underwater group recommended not doing it this time. but doing it the next time, which will be in another 3 years.
Could they use cameras that they put down and look at it rather than diving?
That's a good question, but it's my understanding that when you do an underwater, they want the divers there.
And when do you think this will be? Sorry, I missed that. When do you think they'll die?
The underwater, they'd be in the next triennial, so it'll be in 3 years.
Oh, okay, not for another 3 years?
Correct. And that was the recommendation of Spicer and the underwater inspection from the last go.
So Steve, what will they actually be evaluating?
Pardon?
What will they actually be evaluating?
They come and take a close look at all of the physical aspects of the dam. They look from above, look from below, look at the control room, inspect all of the surfaces of the dam to make sure that it's not spalling or deteriorating. Anything that they can physically see and recommend that we improve upon or repair.
But their below is not utilizing cameras.
They will not be going with cameras underwater, no.
So it's basically what they can observe from their eyes.
Yeah, without an underwater, and it's pretty thorough. It's on their last report is on the website. You can see what they go through.
Thank you. I will.
Commissioner Locke.
Well, just a quick question. So this one is a dive.
No.
This
No,
one is not a dive.
none of that, no diving. No, the underwater diving would be a separate agreement like it was the last time.
Okay, we won't dive again for 3 years.
Correct.
Commissioner Rush.
Spicer's also gonna do the appraisal. Are they gonna do both of these jobs on the same day?
I don't know. I think the appraisal is going to require many different aspects of their group as to estimating how much it would cost to do this part of it, how much it would cost to do this part of it, and it'll entail, they've got the plans, they can go through the plans, they can run different aspects of the plans past the different subs that were used to build the dam and get ideas what it would cost now.
I guess what I was wondering is the person that's doing the inspection, does he provide a different people maybe in the organization, the information from his visual perspective, or when they, is it a different set of eyes that come out to do the appraisal? I'm just trying to see the same guy that's doing the inspection, if his report is what they base the appraisal on, or is it another person that's gonna come out and do a whole eyeball look on his own? Does that make any sense?
It does make sense, and I don't have a very good answer, I'm afraid. I'm not sure if they're gonna have to send more people for the appraisal versus the people they send for the triennial
What I was
inspection.
interested in finding out is how many eyes are gonna be on the dam, or is it just going to be one person's perspective? That's what I was looking for.
They typically have 2 or 3 people come
Okay,
when they do the inspection.
that's great.
Well, so never having been a dam inspector, so basically, since they're not going underwater, they're looking at the control room and the top, and that's it.
All the physical aspects of the dam. They can see, they can physically see and inspect all the physical aspects of the dam. Those are all visible, and they can get out on the pad on the downstream side when the dam is up. They can physically actually see all of the working parts of the dam with that dam inspection.
So this is for the triennial dam inspection. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Motion passes 6-0. Thank you. Then that brings us to the appraisal.
Chairman, I would move to recommend that the Leelanau County Board of Commissioners approve an agreement with the Spicer Group, Inc. for an appraisal of the Leland Dam at a cost not to exceed $2,400. And those funds will also come from 805.
Support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Motion passes 6-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Yes, and that brings us to information technology, and this could be done as one motion.
Morning.
Morning.
This is requesting a renewal to the AT&T contract, three different contracts we have for different, what are called POTS lines, plain old telephone service. They're the lines that, for instance, are in the elevators, fax machine, towers, things like that, and the 911 admin line. They are coming up for renewal. We'd like to renew them for 3 years. We can save quite a bit of money by going with a 3-year contract.
I move to recommend that the County Board of Commissioners waive its policy on bid requirements and approve the renewal of 3 contracts for phone services from AT&T as presented, with funds to come from Telecommunications Fund 685-801 and 685.
656, I think is the.
Oh, yeah.
Yep,
I
six
need
five
my
six.
glasses
Yeah, so you guys
as
have
presented.
Second.
any questions? I just wondered, does the fax line still get used?
They do, yeah, yeah. Very seldom, but they, yeah, the courts use them more because emails are not secure.
No.
So for instance, even between dispatch and the courts, they fax things just because they're a more secure way of transmitting data.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. That brings us then to Gary. Yes.
On that recommendation, what I will do then is include all 3 of those contracts into that one, and so it's a little bit more than what was just said. if that's okay.
Thank you.
He's carrying a baby.
He looks better on camera than I do. Thank you, by the way.
Well, let me just start off. All of you have a copy of this I put on your desk this morning. As we talked about last summer during the budget process in October, I gave an update to, I think we all know that we have great facilities here, but they're getting to the point where they're starting to show their age. The jail now is going on almost 20 years, this building, almost 15 years. We've been spending a lot of money the last couple of years as these buildings age. And how do we go forward and how do we be more proactive versus reactive? I think we've had a system being reactive for a long time. Also, it's, we have a 3-person staff. As I said before, we had the same number of employees in our maintenance department as we did when we were in Leland, with those very simple little buildings. Since then, we've added very complex 2 buildings. We've added a very complex septic system, a dam, and a large park, Barnacle Valley. And so I think we've been a little struggling trying to keep up with everything. So I'd asked Gary if he could do an overview, and if we could then develop a preventive maintenance plan. So Gary started in the fall, and I'll give Gary the opportunity to give an update on this report. And I know you're seeing it for the first time. And then I can talk about what the next steps are. So Gary, you want to just give an overview?
Personally, I thank all of you for allowing me to do this, and especially Chad. I've got an industrial background that I did this on a regular basis for not only just industry, but including some of the customers that we take care of. Going through all of the properties and that, you see a lot of things. I did not take and take pictures of any little cosmetic blemish, cracks, things like that. I took pictures of a lot of the things that were of more importance. In other words, I checked for foundations, I checked for walls, structures, doors, saggings, problems. I spent a lot of time up here in the attic of this building, which is 2.5 stories of timber. And I walked the entire area to look for saggings, drippings, stains, problems, which, like we just said, the properties are in very good shape overall. But as time goes on and the weather, the maintenance staff is taking care of these quite well. You'll see some of the pictures in here are going to show various areas. Case in point, the concrete, some of the walls have got some lateral cracks in them. Those are superficial. There's posts behind them, but it's something that needs to be addressed. But as far as our equipment goes, like I said, this building was actually turned on in '07. And we're experiencing some issues with equipment failures, things like that. We can talk about the Evapco unit, and even the Evapco unit is the unit out there that's the cooling tower, and it's starting to show its age. It's got various areas of rust and gaskets that are deteriorating. The biggest problem that we have with that cooling tower is the screens. They're made of a plastic, and they are basically getting more and more brittle. The cost is quite expensive to replace those items. The tank itself is showing signs of rust, even though it is a galvanized tank, and there are seals that need to be addressed, but we're not leaking from it. The tubes that go through there, in spite of all of the issues, the problems that we've had over the years, are in actually very good shape. Where the cooling tower was placed basically is what's called a parabolic reflector effect. There's 2 cement walls that are right by there. It's planted right there. So when the sun beats upon it, it reflects the heat back into the cooling tower. So it causes the cooling tower to react by turning the fans on, and then also in the high mode. But for the most part, the pumps, the piping and all that have been taken care of. We don't have a problem with that. The air handler, which feeds air to this building, runs at 100% cubic feet per minute all the time. It does not ramp down because there's 60,000 square foot of building here. And it does infiltrate the air. It is filtered when it comes from the outside and from the return air to this building. And then it's sent up through the ductworks to each of the 95 heat pumps. And also it extracts all of the, if you will, the bad air out of the building. So that takes care of that. We have issues basically with the upstairs in the jury room, the doors. When the weather changes, you can actually see it sagging. The doors will actually hit and scrape the bottom of the floor. And then, of course, as more moisture gets into the air, spring and summer, that goes away. So like I said, you keep an eye on different movements, but we're not seeing any foundation problems, wall problems, roof problems, with the exception of one area that is being dealt with by a roofing company. And that is a small leak that occurs when we have a directional rain, wind, and this kind of thing. Now, as you can see the pictures on page 7, we're looking at outside the maintenance area. You can see where the water, the top picture here, the top left, you can see where the water over time has actually, if you'll excuse the expression, dribbled down onto the face of it. What's happening is the water's getting behind the mortar joints. And of course, we've got algae at times, if you will, building up in there, but some of the mortar joints are starting to be pushed out as the cold temperatures basically break up that. Well, that's our concern. And we've discussed this many times, Jerry and I, about how we're going to handle this. But this is just this, and that post that you see in the middle picture, that has got a crack in it, which this picture doesn't really show in detail, but there is a crack that comes all the way from the top and down. Now, there is a steel post in there, of course, that's holding that entire thing up. But what we're doing now is looking at the idea that, okay, we've got to get this addressed before we start seeing blocks fall, which would be highly unlikely, but nonetheless, it's still going to break break free for a lot of the mortar and break up the stones. The bottom picture shows the air grill from the air handler. That's all of the exhausted air out of the buildings and each one of these rooms. Case in point, the grill that's right above you right there is drawing air out and sending it outdoors. That way, the corner of the building over there is where the air comes in from and it's filtered. And that ductwork is vacuumed out 3 times a year because of outside debris, bugs, what have you. I personally take care of that myself.
So for clarification, these pictures that we're looking at on page 7 is this side of the building.
Yeah,
Yes.
lower level.
The lower level.
I'm trying to figure out.
Oh,
yeah,
sure.
Southwest here, so I assumed it was. this
Sure.
way. Okay.
Sure. Jerry basically took care of it. In the beginning, a few years back, we had an issue with that end of the building where we had water coming into the lower level. And he was able to take care of that. He installed some proper drainage and all that type of thing.
I do have a question, but I didn't want to interrupt you.
Sure.
Are you going to talk to us about how you want to get this fixed?
Yeah, we'll talk about next steps
Okay, so that's-
after he gets on his report.
Yes, yeah, no, like I said, Jerry and the maintenance staff, they're all aware of everything here. And it's just a matter of, like you said, developing a plan, a timeline of sorts, when possible to do that. This inspection in general went through all of the buildings and all the properties and all of the electrical components that went with this. As you can see on page 8, you'll see the conduits, the transformers, the panel boxes. Now, I didn't go through and take pictures of everything for obvious reasons. But what I did do, though, is take these panels off and do an infrared gun on them. Now, by doing that, what you're looking for is heat buildup on especially loose connections, because that's where it causes it to arc, it'll melt the insulation. Telltale signs that, so what I'm trying to say is that's where it took a lot of time to do that, to make sure that it was right. And of course, we have 443 phase in here, 277 3-phase, so you have to be careful with that kind of stuff. What I'm trying to say is you can't shut the building down just for the sake of touching it. So you take it off, you put your protective gear on, and you take and actually do the infrared gun on all of this. And then it shows that there was no real problems. Whatever, there was a few little tightenings that had to be done, but it was really not worth mentioning. The transformers, the cabling, and everything was inspected to make sure that it wasn't cut. And as you can see, there's an enormous amount of cables here and even in the ceilings. But I took these pictures just to show you that there's a lot going on in these buildings. This is the courthouse, of course. The second page on page 9, lower level, that's the lighting panel for upstairs for all the courtrooms. And you're going to see another panel here for the lower level. Page 10 is showing the vast network of piping that we have for the cooling tower, for all of the heat pumps, to maintain a certain loop temperature, because these heat pumps basically have to have like a bloodstream, and they has to be of a certain temperature, and that's part of this network to keep it running so that the building doesn't shut down. Sure.
Go ahead.
These are all brand new, right? Does that whole new, those tanks?
Boiler room?
Well, now, which are you referring to?
Well, you don't have a number on them.
Page 10?
Yeah, up in the upper right hand corner.
That is existing piping that was still in use for this system, for this building. Same way with the center picture towards the top center.
And you showed me, I thought that was that from one of the tanks new or?
She's talking about the room downstairs that we had a couple years ago.
Oh, well, those pictures will be coming in there. As far as the new boilers and all of that, that'll be coming up. Yeah. There is, of course, more control panels that were examined, just so that you can see there's quite a few of them in this building. Transformers. Now, on page 11, top left, that is a picture of the old boiler room, and you can see there's part of the boiler system there, but there's a transformer and the control panels for the parking lot lights. That is another whole issue that it works very well. However, we discovered that there's some conduits that run out to mostly the camera pole out there. There's some other buried conduits that we've been seeing water coming in. We were hoping that it was going to be just a superficial seal problem, but it's not. It's actually coming through the conduits, and some of those conduits are open to the point where they don't have wiring in them. But what that means is somewhere out there, there's a ruptured piece of conduit. Whether it means digging that out, but what we had planned on doing, of course, is taking an air compressor and pressurizing it with air and hopefully hear a telltale sign in the ground, which is going to be highly unlikely. It'll probably just blow to the poles or where they're terminated from. But what we're trying to say is that's one of our issues that we are going to take care of, but it's labor intensive, just like everything else is. I just brought that up as far as this is part of this inspection. Now, going back to Commissioner Lautner, bottom right of page 11. That is new piping that was installed into the addition of the existing piping for the new system that come into play for the boilers and for the baseboard heat. And like I said, on page 11, bottom left, that's still part of the old boiler room. The Raypack boilers, which you can only see a partial of it on the right-hand side of that picture, they're going to come out because we don't need them and they look good in somebody else's establishment. Page 12, and again, oh, yes.
Can I just clarify, so they could be recycled and used again?
They can be recycled. They're still in very good shape. We discussed the possibility of trying to resell them, but who would accept the liability on something like that? It would be somewhere you sign off on it and say, look, as is, this is yours. But I can testify because I've been through both of them boilers from the day this place was turned on. I know the shape of them, and yeah, it would be nice if we could sell them. It really would be, but I don't know how we could go about doing that. Obviously, we would never accept the liability for things like that because we didn't install them on and on and on. But to answer your question, they could be recycled, and most likely it's probably what's going to happen to them.
Be nice if they could be reused.
In our world, as far as the maintenance department, we're looking at the idea, we'd like to get rid of them, period. So that would be up to, you know.
To Ukraine, they're gonna need.
Yeah. Yes. Oh,
Let me go back to the conduit question.
sure.
So from what I understood you to say, the conduit runs from somewhere inside this building out to a flagpole.
Well,
Goes
yeah,
right
one
out-
of them
Out
does.
of the center camera that we have to
Yes.
place out
Okay.
with it.
So instead of doing all of that labor intense, hoping to find the pinhole,
Mm.
why don't you just lay a new conduit, and run new wire? Would that be more cost
We're
effective?
to that point of we're gonna be making that decision. Be honest with you, the water flow, if you will, and we're gonna see that in a few pictures coming up here, at times is non-existent. It's just that, like I said, you walk around, you notice things, you look for this, you look for that. And that was one of the things that we noted because first off, you don't want water coming into your building.
No,
And then you do whatever you can to stop that.
correct.
But nonetheless, cause and effect. Something caused that problem and the effect is it's trickling down our walls.
Have you sealed those pipes?
They have been sealed, and I'm going to say temporarily with silicone to prevent this. But you know as well as I do, when you take and put oxygen and water inside a container that's metal, well, you're creating
Oh,
rust.
they're not PVC pipes?
Not the pieces that are coming in. We have to believe though, but I don't know this for fact, that it would transition over to PVC, especially going underneath the parking lot and wherever. Unfortunately, there is no diagram print of where they go. So that's where I suggested we're gonna use an air compressor and see what comes out. Yes. But at that time, what we're gonna do though is see if it's worth even doing that versus, because you don't want to dig that yard up if we don't have to.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions?
Keep going.
Mhm.
Reroute overhead.
I'm sorry?
I'm just saying reroute overhead.
Well, we like equipment, so we can dig up anything.
That's what I'm afraid of.
We have a tunnel that goes all the way over there. Page 12, top left, of course, that is the Ray-Pack boilers we're talking about. The piping that you see in the white, that's basically where it'll be terminated, plugged off, and then re-energize the system with the antifreeze that we use in these. Now, the center and the bottom pictures are of the attic, of course, in this building. And I took a specific picture of the insulation. As you know, we've had a lot of insulation added to this recently here with some air issues that we've taken care of. That was one of the reasons why I was so compelled to go up there once again and take the perimeter of it. And I gotta be honest with you, as you can see on the following page on 13, top and center, you have to be somewhat of an acrobat to get through some of that. There's a lot of valleys, structures. There's a lot of areas that could have shown damage, warpage, leakage. But that's why I'm here to say that I spent a lot of time up there to make sure that if there was something going on, a violation, if you will, it needed to be taken care of. But no, we're in very good shape, except for, like I said, the one judge's chamber where we get a certain rain and wind and it finds its way in. But that's a roofing company's issue that we've already started last year on.
On the rooftop,
Mhm.
at the peak, is there a vent, is it a vented?
Yes, it's a ridge cap.
Yeah.
Yes, so
So,
heat rises and goes out that
well,
way.
not just that, but when you get a certain rain, it will come in through that.
Well, sir, it's a long ways from that peak down to where we're experiencing this. And Jerry and I went through this a lot as far as the, what do you want to call them, cupolas or the little curve off the back. Well, we're only seeing it in one specific area. And we don't see it coming through on the roof decking or any of the trusses. So that's where the mystery is. And it's to that point where we have had a roofing company, and we're going to pursue that even further so that they can do what they have to do because they have the proper equipment to deal with that. Yeah.
Because I've seen it many times, follow those.
Yes.
Those rafters.
Well, that's why I kind of took a couple of these pictures here to show or just for reiteration's sake, you'd see telltale signs of it, staining of the wood and, even decay, but have not seen any of that. The bottom on page 13, the bottom picture is a picture of the draft inducers that had to be installed for the Ray-Pack boilers. Well, we don't use those anymore, but that was part of the responsibility to go up there, maintain them. And because it's so cold up there in the wintertime, of course, you had to make sure that there was no ice that was forming on anything that shouldn't have. Fortunately, we don't use those anymore, and I'm so glad of that. They work very well, though.
I was trying to figure out the picture at the bottom of 12. Is that the walkway? It
That's the
looks-
catwalk.
Oh, okay. Yes, actually, this is what we call a catwalk.
Like rusty water.
Oh, no, that's actually a piece of chipboard. And it's just got the cellulose insulation on it.
How deep is that insulation?
Well, if you look at the center in 12, and for right now I can't.
About 9 to 12 inches.
Yes, and there are areas now, as you can see, that insulation kind of bellied down there. The insulation, like Jerry just pointed out, is deeper in other untraveled areas. How about that? Yeah.
Where Wayne stores the cats until we find rescue homes.
I have to say that when I was 10 years, a 10-year-old would love it up in those raptors.
Oh.
Would that be?
The problem that you run into is it's so easy to shove your foot through the drywall.
It's not good.
No, it's not. Especially when it's 5/8 drywall.
That's what I thought. You would love it up there till you went through the drywall.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And some of you remember, we had an issue with the contractor in 2013. We discovered they did not follow through the plans to
Yeah.
insulate. We did go after them. They did come and do it at no cost. You remember, one year we actually had icicle that went all the way from the top of the building, all the way outside here,
Stalactite.
all the way to the bottom.
And it's
That's
a-
how large it was.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important to go up there and look at it, especially the
Yeah.
valleys, because that stalactite weighed an awful lot. An awful lot.
So at least we're able to get that part resolved at no cost. to the
We
county.
were, I'm going to say again, we knew it for a lot of years, we just couldn't get an administrator to go after it. So that was your first year?
It was my first year.
Yeah.
Yeah. But,
Severe
it
concern.
just goes to show you that, and I'm not looking back, but when you have a project this, you need to hire a building professional to oversee the county's best interest. Because this is one example where it's clear it was on the blueprints, it was in a contract, they just didn't insulate it and no one caught it. And we were having major problems because of that. But we took care of it.
Mhm. Page 14 shows you a picture of upstairs in the legal floor. The left picture, of course, is another transformer. The bottom two or the center two there are the actual clock controllers for in the building. The top one, the little green board, if you will, that controls the tower clock. Out here, and Jerry and I have spent many times until we decided to change some of that. Case in point, the driver ballast, if you will, the driver, they call it, for the LED lights out there kept burning out. Well, that was a $400 bill every time we had to take and rent the lift. So we moved all of the critical components inside the building. And I'm not superstitious, but we haven't had to replace any of that yet. And that's got to be better than 10 years or so. Yeah, I've got dates on that. The center picture here is the light controller. Just like I said, that's the light controller that was inspected upstairs for all of that. The courtrooms, the mood lighting, if you will. On page 15, we're looking at the holding cells, the water control system for the toilets and the sinks and things like that. As you can see, it's well involved. Every connection had to be looked at because you look at leaks and all that. Dwayne does a very good job as far as taking care of a lot of those issues, especially next door. He does a great job at that.
Yeah, the
Maintenance.
page, excuse me, that page you're looking at is the backside of the holding cells
Yes.
upstairs in the courtrooms. There's 2 holding cells in each courtroom that have access to that, and that's on the, called the attic side, where we can access it.
And there's 2 of them there for both the holding cells. And of course, on the right-hand side is a light controller. Okay, well, this picture here on page 16, upper left, it does show, it depicts the crack that I mentioned earlier, the lower level down over here in the maintenance area. Somehow that got put in there. The page 16, the picture towards the center, that is our fabulous Snowmelt system. And that is a wonderful product right there. We've had a couple of issues where the pump seal had leaked, but we've got that taken care of. It's maintained pressure, of course, ever since '07, which is a good thing because the front yard has manifolds in it. Manifolds are where all of the tubing comes in and it gets distributed. It's hot antifreeze and then returns the cool back to, this is a heat exchanger on here on the left-hand side of that picture, but
It's a
basically it's fed from the
sidewalk.
boiler.
It's our sidewalk heating.
Mhm.
That's what this controls.
Yeah, it's a back saver. It's a wonderful piece of equipment. The leak that I had mentioned to you about the conduits, that is in picture number 3, page 16. And then, of course, picture number 4. And like I said, you can see the dribble marks, but It's not a flooding condition, it's just that it's an annoyance, and we're going to be addressing that so that it is not a problem, because you figure we've got spring coming, we're gonna have heavy rains, we're gonna have. So we are gonna take care of it. Okay, the Leland Dam. It's actually a very nice structure. I took, of course, Jerry was with me when we did that. I took a series of pictures of, and you have been exposed to this earlier. What you're seeing in page 18 throughout here is the roof area. When the water snow comes down from the above deck, it nests itself right there. Well, there's a bit of a dip there. Okay, so that is part of the problem where we actually need some sort of a roof. I mean, like a rubber membrane or whatever is suggested to shed that away. Because you'll see in the following pictures here, especially on 19 on the lower picture, those are some of the cracks that have developed over the years on the ceiling. And as we go through this some more, but let me go back to page 19 center picture. That is a wall that is tied right into the wall of the dam. As you can see, there's no mortar, and there's mortar joints, and some of it's actually broken off. Now, I know that that's not part of the dam, but what we're looking at is some of the decaying here, which the picture didn't show it in detail, but there is some decaying of that cement coming on there. So you look at the deck is starting to sag a little bit because of the wood, on and on and on. So that's why we're saying that we really need to protect the top part of this concrete so that when it freezes, it doesn't get into the little nooks and crannies, cracks, and snaps the concrete apart. And we can see, we should be able to see other pictures, page 20, top and top left and center left. You'll see the other cracks that are in there. And Jerry's always been keeping on top of that and caulking them as needed. Yeah, the other pictures as well are showing, I'm just showing different cracks here. And as you can see on page 21, we're looking at the outside, looking into the dam area. There's the blade that's down, and you can see how difficult it is to actually get in there to do anything, let alone a full, a safe inspection. The center picture on 21 is basically an area where the water swirls right in there. A lot of debris in there, but if you look in the right-hand upper portion of that picture, you'll see conduits there and some piping of different sorts. Well, to get to some of that stuff would be hazardous at best. So, you look at, is that an issue that needs to be dealt with? Because we can see that the surrounding structures, the deck, the walls are starting to decay. Same way with the bottom picture on 21. I just took those pictures just for the sake of clarity. Oh, do we have any other questions on that? Yeah, because we already know about the dam and what's going to happen there, but at least you have pictures to see what's going on with it.
Well, I'm just thinking, like, even with the mortar coming out, those are small problems that can develop into big problems.
Yes, sir.
So that's why they're talking about putting a roof on there, some kind of ceiling to.
In our world, if you will excuse that expression, putting that roof on there basically will shed away all of the water and the potential of cracking more concrete. Yes, but they would end up flashing that particular wall with the cement block issue or whatever is agreed on to do that.
Well, and repoint it as well.
Yeah, if they can get in there to do that.
No, I didn't.
Oh.
When you said repoint, you meant remortar?
Yeah,
Okay.
repointing, they use them.
Yeah, they take out all of the broken
Yeah,
pieces.
just about the old-
Yeah. Okay, and as far as the condition of the dam goes, I mean, there was only one flaw, and that was in the hydraulic pump. There was one little drip that come off of one of the actual diverting valves. It really wasn't a problem. That's why I say it wasn't worth taking a picture of it, but it's being taken care of. Okay, now comes the parks. Now, I gotta be honest with you, I did not take pictures of all of the flaws. Just the important, what I felt is important, because coming from an industrial background, these are the things that you look for that can be taken care of. Now, talking to Scott, of course, he does do an excellent job. But he has got a lot on his plate, even with his other person, but he knows about this stuff and he's got an even bigger list than I'm able to present here. So like I said, he's got it on some sort of a plan to deal with all of this when he's able to, but once we get together and decide this, then we'll have a plan of attack. But Miles Kimberly Park, as you can see here, I've got various things outlined. In other words, we got to have ground fault circuit interrupters, receptacles in areas now for obvious reasons. In use cover plates for anything for outdoors or public use. I mean, that has to be done. But as you can see in the pictures on 23, the deterioration of the wood frames and the doors are a big deal. Okay, that's why I did that. And then there's, well, this is,
Steel doors.
well, there are some
Steel
of them.
door.
There are some of them, as you'll see the other pictures. This particular one is, but like I say, it's rotting away, if you will. And, you think about the snow and the ice buildup and maybe the salt. But the framework, as you can see, is wood, and it's, you're gonna see other pictures there as well. The exit lights not illuminated above the door, and I guess that's a, call. I know that they're supposed to be now. They're supposed to have a minimum of 2.5 hour rating, but I don't know if that's applicable to this. Like I said, I look at things from an industrial standpoint. Okay, as you see, yeah, the doorknob was loose, and that of course needs to be changed, but so is the whole door. I mean, it's pretty sloppy. And also, what the anti-theft guard that goes on those, the plate that goes over them so you can't stick a knife in there. Okay, on that park in particular, there's a lamp post. When you go up by the tree lines and all that, that apparently was knocked down. It was exposed, the wiring's disconnected. But like you said, there's also a trip hazard or whatever has to be done about that. That was an issue that, needed to be taken care of. I've got pictures of that. Again, once the doors are an issue, but the fascia and some of the soffits are deteriorating. The fascia, of course, is where the roof drips down, all that. And you're gonna see in a lot of the, what do you want to call them, cupolas, or where the benches are and all that, you're gonna see the pictures of a lot of the woodwork that just needs to be repaired. Stand control problems. Oh, okay. In the actual shop itself, there's some furnace issues there. Ceiling repair for the vent pipe. Again, ground fault circuit interrupters that are needed. Seals on the overhead door need to be replaced because you can see, I mean, they've been used quite a bit. The first aid station, the fire extinguishers, they need to be mounted in an accessible area, uncluttered. I mean, that's, like I said, I'm looking at this from an industrial standpoint, and that's what, so if the rules are different here, well, then they're different. But going into this thing, note all of this stuff so that a decision can be made from that. And of course, fuels and chemicals or anything that is class 1 that can explode or vaporize, that needs a separate storage container. And it's got to be approved for that purpose. The fencing, okay, there's a lot of areas that need to be addressed on that. Cyclone fencing, the tie downs, the straps are broken. There were weldments that were cracked, but like I said, there's an awful lot of activity that goes on to these places. Fire hydrant, the fire hydrant out there is non-used. Okay, it's not hooked up, it's more of a facade. However, I'd asked about that very issue. So what if you got some guy in the weekend, the new fire guy, and he doesn't know that? That's what I'm saying. There should have been a non-working hydrant sign or something put on there. I'm sure the fire departments know that. It's just that it could be a problem, even though it never has been. It's just one of those things that happen.
What color is it painted?
Red.
Oh, that would be the first place I would start. Change the color.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like you said, if you got a fire truck that comes up there, I mean, they would know this. I get that. I do understand that. It's just that when you're in an emergency and you're trying to find anything you can, that may be a deterrent. I could be
Gary, for
overreacting.
the sake of time, why don't you just go over the highlights of the park?
Okay.
Because we're gonna come back with a detailed report next
So
step.
be it. Highlights of the park, basically, on page 24, 25. This is what I'm talking about as far as the sidings of the buildings are in the ground. Okay, there's no watershed way. As you can see, these pictures depict the deterioration of the siding, which allows little critters to get in there and do their little nesting.
Wood siding,
The wood siding.
wood siding.
Yes, yeah, and I see, you can see this is T111 siding, but it's buried in the ground. And all these pictures. On page 25, you'll see that the walkway and that park bench is horrendously slivered, if you will. And there's trip hazards because the,
Shouldn't these problems just be brought to the park and rec?
Yeah.
I mean,
We
this is-
have-
These are
yes.
issues that they should, I mean, they're talking
Why don't you just
about
go over the
a
highlights?
mile walkway,
Yeah.
and this is stuff that
okay,
they need to have.
You just
their-
summarize on each park.
okay,
we can
and you're,
spend-
you're right,
I was just
because
gonna
this
say
is gonna
this
be
is-
done.
Yeah,
And that's why I said Scott's fully aware of all of this, and he's got his list his own, but
right, but I don't think the park and rec board is, and I think if you notify them all about these things, because they all look like repairs that they need to take care of.
and basically, you're right. That's all these are, especially on page 27. It's just different things that do need maintenance attention, which will be done. Page 31 on Veronica Valley, that these top left picture there is basically a utility box that is not in use, but it has to have a cover because it's got some other things. But like you said, we're just going through some of the highlights right now. The holes that are underneath this building here at Veronica Valley, but the watershed problem, water is a problem here. As you can see by this water here, I've been stuck there twice and had to have Scott pull me out. Okay, and like you said, the wastewater treatment is an entity all itself. And that basically is a continual maintenance thing. The tanks look to be in very good shape. The controls, we stay on top of that all the time, and the pumps, the floats are taken care of as needed. Okay. We'll go to the tower sites now. Okay, tower sites are the biggest thing that we've got there. And the question is do we take care of that, or do these belong to somebody else? But the fencing at Central Tower has collapsed and is collapsing in certain areas, as you can see by these pictures. There's trees that are dying, if you will, that really need to be cleaned out. But the ground, but it's on page 34, the ground that shows these fences are starting to wash down. So as you can see, some of the fencing and all that, and the cement posts, the posts that are in the cement are starting to fall down as well.
It's about a 70-degree angle off that fence.
Yeah.
It's almost straight down.
Yeah,
And that hill,
That's a state police tower there.
that's the central tower right here in Schaumburg,
Oh, okay.
top there, yeah, the main tower.
well, in my world, there are items that I have to take care of. Case in point on page 36, that's the heating air conditioning unit that's there. So that's why I look at all of this as well. Empire Tower, that's kind of self-explanatory, the door there. But there's a lot of debris laying around these areas, and that's why I took a lot of the pictures. There's some trees that are basically leaning towards the structures that could be cut out because a lot of them are dead. And, oh, well, the Maple City Tower, page 39, lower left, as you can see the lateral crack that's there, it's getting bigger. The door, of course, needs to be replaced. There's the cement slab. That's the overviews with this. 40 and 41 are basically some of the components that are in these cell towers. It's just there for the sake of, showing that things were looked at. Law Enforcement Center, okay. The same that was done here in any of these buildings was done over there. In fact, looking up through the ceiling, looking for conditions that would warrant a problem later on. Insulation on the pipes, leaking of the pipes, that's page 43. The roof drains, of course, Jerry and I have dealt with this many times, is it's dribbling down the side of the building. And then, of course, we're talking about the cement issues. The steel doors that go to the mostly used ones, the EOC, and as far as delivery door, as you can see by these pictures here, are they're ravaged by salt, they're ravaged by rust and things like that. And we discussed this many times about actually sandblasting them and putting a protective coating on this. But that's a maintenance issue. Like I said, I've taken these pictures and shown you all of the things that I've looked at in detail. And page 45 is the new system for the jail. As you can see, that big blue picture on the lower right-hand side is the heat exchanger, all of the new piping, the new pumps, and then the page 45 upper left is the panel boxes that I did the infrared tests on. And then, of course, there's more pictures, and then there's the new boilers that we had talked about earlier for the jail.
We have the same ones here,
Yes.
similar.
Yes.
So in terms of next step, this is a great report, but if it just goes on someone's shelves, it's worthless. So we're gonna get together, come up with a plan. We're gonna identify what the top issues are, come up with a plan and come back to you at some point with a specific plan, how we're gonna address the major issues. Some of them are just regular maintenance, but some of them need to be addressed sooner versus later. And so we're gonna come up with a plan based on this and come back at some point to the board with a list of specific priorities, cost, and hopefully a timeline, how we're gonna identify them and repair them hopefully.
Get her done. Stuff.
And I assume that we'll have this information relatively soon in time for a budget.
Oh,
discussion.
yes, yeah, definitely before budget.
So if we have, we know the issues, we have the plan, and we need to budget in the
Yeah.
next year.
I'm thinking maybe April, probably May, though.
Oh, okay.
I mean, so before the budget process, yes.
It won't be too scary.
Mr. Wessel, did you have a question? No? Okay, I thought maybe you did.
He was
Anyone else?
adjusting his volume.
Oh. Anyone else? No?
I do have one more question.
Sure.
Manpower. Do we look at the available manpower that we have currently and how that will play into what needs to be done on a regular basis?
Yeah, we're gonna address that in the
Yeah.
upcoming
That'll be
report,
part of our
because that is a
discussion.
concern that I have, because I've been expressing it since last summer.
One other follow-up on Dave's question. Do we ever utilize the trustees here for inmates?
Don't have enough, a lot of times. Yeah, or
Yeah, some.
you're not able to get them out
Yeah.
for certain reasons. There's certain things going on.
Look
That's,
at a lot of these park projects.
I have a setup with the jail that I can do that when, they have enough for people that they can let out. But I have to be with them. Someone has to be with them at all times. You just can't let them go. And things have changed now, 20 years ago. Used to load them up and take them to Miles Kimberly Park, 4 of us in an old white truck. At the evening, and head out to Miles Kimberly to do painting and stuff on the pavilions back in the day. Things have changed. So that wasn't legal, but 4 of us, shoulder to shoulder.
Times of
Any
change.
other questions? Thank you very much.
No, thank you for letting me do this. And granted, I realize that, there went into a lot of redundancy there, but I wanted you to understand and know that I looked at a lot of things and to make sure that we didn't miss anything. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So
you.
that-
Is the reason you brought those?
Oh, that's next.
Next, yeah.
Yes.
Do you want to continue or do you want to take a break?
I think we should take a break at this time.
I can tell, look at people's faces.
So let's try to be back by 11.
Oh, okay,
Stay here. because we're not summer.
yes, I'm gonna go use the rest. He said by 11. Huh?
Take some extra time.
Or at least we put the video camera on.
Great job.
Oh, you know what? I just occurred to me what pictures you were talking about. We just have several pictures.
I know. Sure. You might have killed somebody. Right?
We were all vaccinated.
Ah.
that would.
There.
Okay. The air purification system, number 6.
Yeah, thank you. Let me give you an update. Let me start by the sheriff apologized for not being here. He was hoping to be here, talk about his building and his recommendation, but he had a training session today that's been scheduled, and it's, I guess, the only day of the session, the training activity is going on. So he apologized for not being here. So we looked at a lot of things, talked about last month, some issues surfaced, legitimate issues that we were able to get resolved with Gary's input and also the gentleman from the company that the sheriff's been working with. So let's start with the law enforcement center. In August, the sheriff was concerned about COVID in the building there and so forth. He worked with a company, and the company on loan gave him these units here that you see in the room here that have been using there in August. They're in the jail, and there's also one in the 911 dispatch center. By all accounts, they're working well. Sheriff's very happy with them. I understand Matt is happy with them. He does think they've had a positive impact. So that's the 4 pure and clean units. That is kind of a closed environment there, which is completely different than this building here, because it's basically sealed. People don't come in and out of the buildings very much. And then they also, and this has been used in both buildings, the mid-range hydro blaster unit. And that is a portable unit, fairly large, that we have used in both buildings. If we had someone that has been exposed to COVID, they would bring it over and our staff would use it and basically clean out that area. Is that a fair
Yes,
review of that?
neutralize the particulates.
Yeah. So for that building, and I think you're in agreement, those units work very well over there for what their purpose is.
Agreed, and
Yeah.
even in situations like this room right
Yeah.
here.
So we have one here that we tried, I think at the Buildings and Grounds Committee meeting. We turn it off and turn it back on. Within 3 minutes, you can kind of feel the difference. So for the law enforcement center, what the sheriff is recommending and what Gary, I believe, is endorsing now, is the purchase of 4 of the pure and clean units and the purchase of the 1 mid-range hydro blaster unit. Those are units we've actually had here since August. And it's a point where we have to make a decision, either purchase them or give them back. And so I believe your endorsement of that system works well for that building there. They don't have traffic, doors aren't being constantly open and closed. They're pretty much isolated in those units. So that recommendation is 4 of the pure and clean units at $14.99.99. And you have all the medical, the scientific data that was in your board packet, so I won't go over that. The mid-range hydro blaster unit is $3,999.96. There was a 15% increase as of February 1st, but they're keeping the prices the same as they quoted us back in August. So that total cost would be $9,999.95. For this building, Gary, do you want to talk about what you are recommending for this building?
What we have done in buildings is very similar to this, Munson Hospital, including all of the Copper Ridge. I mean, just a few. We have different products that come out all the time with different standards. You have all of this information here. Basically, this is, and I'm just going to dumb it down if you'll excuse that expression. This is nothing more than an ultraviolet light that does kill, but it requires kill pathogens. It does require an airflow, and in our case, that air handler never shuts off. We already have one of these on the air handler itself downstairs, but I was looking at the idea independently of installing this and this device, and I'll explain this in a minute, in each of the floors ductwork, supply air ductwork. And what that simply means is the air that comes from the outside goes through a filtering system, gets pumped into the duct system to each floor. Then from there it gets put to each heat pump and ventilation system. So the idea is to have a set of these on each floor so that because of the spans of the floor, it would be totally covered. This little guy right here, basically, in simplistic terms, is nothing more than an electrostatic discharge. And it neutralizes airborne particles. And basically it kills it. What's so nice about this little guy here is it's self-cleaning. It sends out electrostatic, and then of course this little wand comes around, cleans those brushes off, and you basically don't, as if it gives you an error message, then you know you have a problem, but they are quite effective. When you look at this closed building, especially the top floor, well, the middle floor here does have a lot more air infiltration of particulates. And that was one of the concerns that I was looking at as far as installing these on each floor. But like you said, the filters in that air system downstairs gets changed 3 times a year. And then these filters in the heat pumps get changed twice a year. So that's it in a nutshell. Did anybody want to see any of these?
So So I think I missed a word. Are you recommending both or one or the other?
Both per floor. Yes. Electrostatic discharge, basically it's a magnetic for any airborne particulates, and then it neutralizes it and of course wastes it like dust. This here is an ultraviolet light, which has been shown, and you have the information of killing various types of spores, molds, and of course with a big concern of, you know, this COVID thing and whatever may come up in the future. We're in a quick line of
So
defense
that instead of that is what you're saying?
For this building, yes.
for this building, but after going through the literature on this and discussing with different people about this, and when you take a situation like this, a room where you have a lot of people that come in and out, case in point, the office we're gonna do there, this is a first line of defense. I mean, you can actually see, because that has an ultraviolet light in it, but it has a HEPA filter, so it's actually circulating the air around. Okay, but when you take people that come in and out and all that, it's just basically, like I just said, a first line of defense.
So the cost per floor with both of these, labor installed is $2,108. If we did all 3 floors in the building, it'd be $6,324, and that's in your
Yeah.
board packet.
Rather than 1 unit for.
Yes.
Right, but I'm wondering, we already get a total exchange of air in here. How often is, went through these units?
Well, it's constantly going as far as I apologize, I don't have the cubic feet per minute, but I can get that for you. The thing that we have to take in consideration is, and even though it may not be a problem, that machine downstairs basically is deteriorating. So what I'm trying to say to you is the air volume that goes from the blower motors, it's going to draw air from wherever it can. So if there is an opening in the filters or around the filter racks, it's going to draw wherever it can get the air that it was designed to.
Right, and as the filters become dirty, it'll
Yes.
it'll lessen. I know all that.
Yes,
But we are taking air from outside and putting it in the building and taking air from inside and pushing it back outside.
that in a nutshell, and it does,
And where does it exhaust?
it exhausts down in the maintenance area.
Okay.
Yeah, and it draws in right from this building here, or I'm sorry, this corner right here.
So, I mean, if we're taking air from the outside, we're not really bringing in COVID or any of the other things. And so, I mean, this is gonna be a redundancy of what we have. Would you say that or not? I mean, and then the Elberton Law Enforcement Center, does that have the same type of system where it exchanges the air?
No, that has 5 different rooftop units that draws in 100% outside air and it's dampered down. That I've added extra filtering onto it to block out the larger particles that fly up on the roof. And then it goes through anywhere from a MERV 8 to a MERV 11 filter.
So it doesn't bring in outside air and push out air?
It does bring in outside air, and then it is balanced through the exhaust fans.
Okay. So
Yes.
it does exhaust it out. So it has an exchange of air.
It does have an exchange of air, yes.
But we don't know how often, but usually it's set up for within an hour or 2 hours or something. The air is entirely exchanged in a building.
That is correct. We do have
So
that
We are
report.
doing that already. This would be a redundancy of what we already have.
Well, the big concern about a lot of this is, of course, the if you will, the diseases, things that are coming out. It's just like, it's whatever we can do to neutralize any of the particulates that may cause us a health issue. That was the whole purpose of all of this. These companies went to, great lengths to study this, as you can see in those reports. And that was the whole concern by it. But I understand what you're saying with the airflow, exchange. So that's what we.
Well, you basically asked some of the same questions I was gonna ask about the basically redundancy and
Well, we bring this up only for the sake of,
comparison to what we were looking at.
yeah, like I
If
said,
we're
it's
going
the,
to go ahead with these smaller units, what you're saying is these are really ineffective or inefficient for what we do in this building.
what I look at is I look at the whole building.
Yeah.
These are, of course, a localized area and they do work.
Yes.
I guess that's the clarification I needed to
Right.
make.
Commissioner Locke.
Ongoing maintenance on these units, what are the filters or how often or all of that?
Now, you talk about this building or,
Well,
This
that
unit,
whole, yeah, start with.
oh, basically, it's just a matter of keeping the dust off if there is any. This device right here, basically, if there's a problem, it shows up on the display, but it's virtually maintenance free. What happens is after a time cycle with this little blade comes around and wipes these little brushes off. And that's where the static, if you will, for simplicity's sake, emits from. And it just basically cleans the dust off. It neutralizes a lot of these pathogens.
I can tell you on those, because the question was brought up, I called the rep because I didn't know the answer. I think that question came up last month. They're about $150 per filter and they should last at least 2 to 3 years.
For the jail, there would be better.
Any other questions?
Warranty on this unit.
These here, now it should be, they will be in this documentation here, and I believe, and I'll prove it, but I believe there was a 5-year warranty on this. You caught me off guard, and I apologize for that.
That's okay, I did look for it, I just didn't see it.
I will have that information though. If you need it today, that's not a problem, but I apologize. Right now, I don't have
In
that.
terms of priority, the next door is a higher priority. Unfortunately, that's where we've had a majority of COVID cases because it's a closed environment. And that's where our deputies, if you look at it, the majority of people that have had COVID employees have been next door because I think of the environment they're in. So that's why the sheriff was very proactive trying to get these last August. Well, we're to a point where the company says, okay, you have to pay for them or give them back. On this building, we originally looked at those, but to put those in each offices would be very expensive. I'm not sure it'd be cost effective. So that's why I asked Gary, is there any other system we could potentially look at here?
So does the sheriff endorse these for over at the law enforcement?
For those?
Yes.
Yeah, very much. This was his idea.
And this wouldn't work at the law enforcement center, this system here.
It would work, it would not have the same impact as I understand. Is that?
That is correct.
Yeah.
And that is correct. These would be mounted in the rooftop units where these are more closer to a potential problem, airborne problem.
And are they having a COVID issue over there at this time?
Not currently, but have they had them in the winter? Yes, yes. Matt, I don't know what your spot, you have one in your office and you were telling me you were quite pleased.
Yeah, the unit that we keep in dispatch, it does seem to cut down on a lot of the stagnant air that we have in dispatch. Dispatchers do utilize vaporizers and infusers to, kind of pleasant up the smell, and they haven't had to use them as much since we have put in that filter.
So do you recommend that you get that?
For my employees, yes, I do.
Is there any motion?
Well, it does a whole score of cleansing against everything you can imagine from looks of it. How would we pay for these? Where would it come out of?
Well, we have our finance director here. I didn't bring with me last month. You recommended it came from, you had a count, and I apologize. I don't remember. You told me it was in the board packet last month. Was it capital outlay? There's a,
After spending on the furniture at least 17,000, so I recommended to take it from max budget under EMS. The COVID fund. the COVID fund.
So the jail units too from this month?
we can, if you wish to proceed, we can come up with specific account number by next Tuesday.
By Tuesday, that's
Yeah. I guess the question is, do you wish to proceed? It probably makes sense to break out into two separate dialogues. One is about the law enforcement center.
I would recommend to the board that we move this issue forward till next week.
Any other comments?
That's assuming that we're suggesting we're interested in proceeding by moving it forward. Okay.
We have two separate proposals for that.
That isn't what it just moved the whole thing forward.
Yeah.
So wanted to keep separate. I mean, I'm opposed to getting them for this bill. I don't think that's excessive and
I can change my motion to state to separate the items.
Okay.
Between the sheriff's department and that building and this building. And move it forward.
I would say, I move both of them forward as independent items.
Thank you. Move them both forward independently. We can have a discussion independently.
any other questions or statements? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. No. Motion passed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, okay.
That brings us to
Okay.
emergency management, local 911 surcharge, I think we're on page 77.
Good morning. Believe it or not, the state was a little early with their documentation for the 911 surcharge. So this normally is an April decision, but have it to you before for May or for March. So the Board of Commissioners has decided to collect the maximum 42 cents per device per month that's allowable by the board. If you do want to pursue anything above that, it will require a vote of the people. And unfortunately for this report deadline, I think that any discussion to raise the surcharge would be for next year because we would have to have it on the ballot before May 15th.
Remind us where we are with the project and length of time in terms of paying off.
So for the radio project was a 10-year project. We, entered into that in 2017, 16 is when we started in September. So it'll be 10 years from that we have the $276,000 payments to Motorola every September, I do believe.
And the sources of funding we're using is this and.
Yeah, the 911 surcharge is able to offset some of that. And there's some maintenance agreement fees with the fire departments that are going into it. And then the rest is general fund, I do believe.
Now, there's been talk the last couple of years of Lansing about raising the amount over the 42 cents. Have you heard anything?
I haven't heard anything that would affect the 42 cents. There has been some discussion about raising the 19 cents statewide.
Yeah.
That would have a much longer trickle effect to us, but that could be something in the future as well.
There's at least dialogue on Lansing that it may be time to give boards more flexibility and go beyond 42 cents, because as Matt pointed out, anything above 42 cents has to go to the voters. There's been talk the last 2 years about raising that amount to give local boards the ability to make that change.
Yeah.
Is there anything that says we can't put this on the ballot for like in November?
No, we could pursue that. And it could even go on the ballot before then, but we would have to put the language to start collecting July 1st of 2023 as opposed to this coming July. That's when this report would reflect.
Right.
So you could put it on the ballot before November. It could go on May, it could go August, whatever you decided.
Just curious.
And I think,
know that I-
sorry.
Yes, okay.
No, Matt and I think even up it before, we did some research on this several years ago. Most counties are getting away from a 911 millage. They're going to a 911 surcharge. I believe Grand Traverse County has a
Yes.
surcharge.
They do.
Well,
Benzie County does.
I was talking about the surcharge.
Yeah, I know,
Okay.
yeah, because we had a dialogue. about that.
Yeah,
So anything above 42 cents has to be above, and I believe the cap is two,
It goes all the way to $3.
close to three, it
Yep.
was 275.
I think Grand Traverse collects $2.76, Benzie collects $3.
So most counties are getting away from villages, going to a home surcharge.
So what's your recommendation?
For this year, for this report, we submit a no change letter to the state. I have no problem discussing putting it on the ballot to start collecting in 2023.
You recommend that?
I think the board has a lot more other challenges. This would be one less challenge that you'd have to take on.
I move to recommend that the Board of Commissioners approve staying status quo for the annual SNC-500 collective and remittance report and have the 911 director and county complete, sign, and submit the necessary documents online as required.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Motion passes 6-0. Thank you.
Okay.
Right, but then that brings us then to shared capital connection.
Yeah, so this probably is more of a discussion topic than anything. I did put a motion on there because I didn't want to have an incomplete EDS. Basically, Cherry Capital Connection has decided to change their delivery, their business model, if you will. They want to move away from the fixed wireless portion and transition to fiber to the home. Now, they do have RDOF funding for specific areas in Leelanau County that they have to provide fiber to the home. And everybody would prefer fiber over fixed wireless anyway. So what that would change with Cherry Capital Connection is that they want to utilize our tower sites as distribution nodes. So they would have a shelter on the ground that they would be able to run fiber in the easement to the shelter and then be able to redistribute it at that point too. Now we're still in the infancy of discussing what Cherry Capital Connection really wants to do, but I suspect that they will still need some sort of equipment on the tower in order to backhaul their equipment. So it's possible that they would still have equipment on the tower. It just would be far less of a footprint, if you will. So they'll be moving away from having transmission antennas and probably more towards microwave dishes, if you will. So what that entails is we had the county attorney look at the land lease agreements for the sites that we don't own. So that would be Maple City, Omina, and Northport. And in all of those agreements, the county has the right to be able to lease space within the easement for fiber delivery. What the attorney cautioned is that we should not extend these terms of agreements past what the land lease is. And right now, in Omina, the initial term runs up in 9 years. Now, the county has the option to extend that another 20, so it could be 29 years that we have a lease at the Omina Tower site. For the Maple City, we have 26 more years. Now, with the tower lease agreement, the board has made the stance that no lease should be longer than 15 years. And I agree with that because realistically, who's going to be around 15 years from now? It probably won't be me. Probably won't be any of you. But with easements and fiber in the right of way, those are much longer term leases. And that is what Cherry Capital Connection is going to want to pursue. So that will be a decision for the board to decide and taking into consideration the length of term that we have on the land lease agreements at the sites that we do not own. So we can have that discussion. And if we want to move this forward to next week, I should be able to have a better idea of what we can charge as far as running conduit in the easements. So what these lease agreements for easement access would kind of mirror what our tower lease agreements are, because the tower lease agreement is equipment on the tower and ground space for shelter, generator, and propane tank. That ground space would remain the same with these easement leases. It would just be leasing space for conduit in the ground as opposed to equipment on the tower.
I would move that we move this forward to next Tuesday night and allow Matt an opportunity to do a little more exploring. And I will say, that's the other motion, I will say and comment that I did send a number of questions to Matt. And I'm just asking past practice and a bunch of questions. So I know he's following up on all of that, probably has already thought of all.
That's fine.
So I think that gives us a chance to pursue and Matt a chance to pursue some of this information.
I would second that. I have a question, is there a, I'm sorry, what?
Thank you. Since I have the floor. I support the motion and I also have a comment. My comment is along the line of other providers. So as we move forward, we will be doing a blanket sort of easement contract to try to get as many providers as possible. And this might be where you're going, Patricia, as possible on our towers and get fiber out there, because you're right, it is the preferred. So.
Yeah.
But we want to.
Correct.
All of our ISPs, if they're all ISPs.
We wouldn't want to limit ourselves to just one easement access for the tower sites. So we would want to make sure that it's not monopolized. I think that the only thing that would limit us would be the space within the easement to run the conduit. So we will be limited to that, but I suspect that we would be able to, handle multiple ISPs if they wanted to do this.
Yeah, that's just what we have to make sure.
Yes, I agree.
Any other comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us then to the prosecuting attorney renewal agreement. West Law, Thompson Reuters.
Mr. Chairman, I just had a question. When we were doing and it probably covered it before I got here, the building security, did we, the sleep door?
That was taken off the
That's
agenda.
what I wanted.
Yeah.
I just wanted to mark it off. Thank you.
Yeah, Matt and Kelly are looking at other options.
Okay.
So they asked that it be taken off the agenda.
Super, thanks. My apologies for interrupting.
I would move to recommend that the Leelanau County Board of Commissioners waive its policy on bid requirements and approve renewing the contract with Westlaw Thompson Reuters to provide online legal research to the prosecuting attorney's office for a 2-year period beginning April 1st, 2022. Signing the contract as presented. Funds to come from 250-229-801 and 250-230-801.
Support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Motion passes 6-0. Thank you. And that brings us then to Finance Audit Committee update.
Yeah, let me just give an update. And Finance Audit Committee has not met historically for most of the time I've been here, but I think this year we're going to meet on a regular basis. We have a meeting scheduled for March 23rd. We had one in February. And let me just talk about what one of the recommendations was. And this kind of goes back to what we discussed during our budget process last summer. As you remember, both independently, the Parks and Recs Commission and I both recommended some administrative oversight on the Parks and Recs Commission. I did not know they were doing that. They did not know I was going to recommend it. I think we talked about that. It's a major part of the county and there's no administrative oversight. Laurel Evans has basically been doing that the last couple of years. That's keeping them focused on proper procedures, has been doing their bid documents, has been attending all their meetings, has helped them, guide them along with proper open meetings requests and procedures. And I think as we go forward long-term, we need to address a long-term fix for the parks and recs. But Ms. Evans has been functioning that in that capacity the last couple of years during the budget process. You did put, I believe it was a $3,600 or $3,800 in the budget. Jen, do you remember?
It was $3,900.
Okay, $3,900 in the budget. And so I brought this up. I talked to the chairman of the Parks and Recs, Casey Noonan, and he endorsed the concept. I brought it up to the finance committee. It's one of the things that we're going to have to deal with. Is one of those. We have a series of things with the non-union pay scale that we're going to be dealing with starting on March 23rd. But one of the things that at first we could do is, in honor of all the work Laurel has done, that we authorize a recognition stipend of $2,000 for her past 2 years of service. So I'm breaking this down into 2 separate requests, and that was endorsed 2-0 by our finance committee. So this is for all the extra work she has done. This is not part of her duties and responsibilities. She has attended all our meetings and well as guided them through their numerous bid processes.
So you're talking, so the recommendation was for 2,000 to cover both years
For past, yes.
for past, so
Yes.
not 2,000 a year, you're just saying 2,000 for
A
past.
one-time stipend for $2,000. We have to be careful because when we talk about hourly employees and stipends and all, so I did get legal counsel. It's perfectly legal to give stipends on an occasional basis for past work. You can't make it part of the future unless you change the pay scale. Because she is an hourly employee. If she was a salary employee, it'd be completely different. So this is the recognition for the past, her efforts for the last 2 years. With no guarantee of any future. Stipends. Yeah.
I see that you have 2
Yeah,
recommendations
these are
here,
2 separate.
and so now you're looking for a motion.
I'm just on the first one. And as Jim pointed out, the Parks and Recs did put $3,900 in their budget.
For this. Does it come out of their budget?
Commissioner Sorsville.
But I was just, I agree, Laurel has done an excellent job, and she keeps us afloat from being very, very helpful to the Board of Commissioners as well. My question, I was just looking at, not whether it's deserved, just looking at process, taking the person out of it, and what does that do? If this is a token of appreciation or a recognition, special recognition. I know everybody works hard around here, and I don't know whether or not she is compensated for the hours that were involved with all the extra things that she was doing, or is this in recognition of the hours done above and beyond paid or overtime hours?
Well, as our employee, she's entitled to overtime pay, so she does get compensated, but she does put a lot of extra effort, and it does
Yes,
take
she
time
does.
away from her normal duties and responsibilities. Long term, though, I think it ties into our discussion about the future of the commissioner position and so forth. And I think all of you agreed last summer, we need to come into a long-term plan and address administrative oversight for the Parks and Rec Commission.
Well, and also we talked about, a wage survey. I mean, if some of these jobs, if people are in positions where they're having to do a lot of extra responsibilities that really weren't reflected in the job, then the job pay base needs to be increased. And
Well, as Mr. Robbins and Mr. Wessel can attend, we had a discussion on that at our budget meeting, and that'll be the main focus of our March 23rd meeting. And I think we're gonna have to have a series of meetings, because we're looking at the entire non-union pay scale. As you know, from discussions from last summer and fall, there's some issues there, the steps between the pay scales and the range, and everything, the issue of the chief deputies pay was brought up also. So we had a general overview on that on February 9th. Commissioner Lawler was unfortunately not able to attend. So we scheduled a learning for March 23rd, but I think this committee is actually going to be very busy the next couple of months addressing all those issues. Because they are on late. So this is looking back, this is a recognition cycle. This is not going forward. But this year, we'd like to resolve who's going to have the administrative duties for Parks and Recs.
I think it's tremendous that she has stepped up and from what you have all said, done a very effective job. That she has stepped up and from what I hear, done a very effective job at stepping in to help out. I would support this as a recognition for that past. And though we need a fix.
Yeah, they're two separate issues at this point.
Yeah.
And as you know, we've had challenges with the Parks and Recs. They're a great bunch of volunteers, but they all are volunteers. As you remember, we've had challenges the last couple of years of them prior to Laurel's involvement, following proper procedures and bid process and signing contracts, and making commitments without going through the formal process. And fortunately, we haven't had that recently, thanks to Laurel's efforts. But this is going in the future, that's something that we're gonna have to deal with and come up with a plan.
I agree. Laurel has put some extra effort. However, my concern is Laurel wears this hat more than just on Parks and Rec. She also serves the opioid task force. Okay. So my question is, what about all the boards? I'm not quite sure how to say this. We're all on different boards, serve on different boards. How do those other boards comply?
I think I could address that.
Okay.
And I don't know where you're coming from, but I understand.
Because
Yeah.
what I wanted to say,
Yeah.
we have commissioners that serve on these boards. And Laurel, from what I understand, being part of the administration's office also serves the Board of Commissioners. Is that not correct?
Yes
Yes
and
or
no.
no?
It's a very good question, and I actually got a legal opinion, because I was hoping I could dump the Parks and Recs over to the clerk's office for minutes, but Michelle did not like that. And no, in all seriousness, legally, the clerk's office is responsible for taking minutes or outsourcing that to someone like, technically, like the road commission. The clerk's office has to be responsible for taking minutes of all county functions. The Parks and Recs, because you've developed a commission versus a committee, is separate from that. So the clerk office has no legal mandate to take minutes for that. At one time, I believe you did, but I think you got so overwhelmed, especially when they fractured into subcommittees for all the parks. They meet on a very regular basis. So for the clerk office to have someone take all those minutes would just be overwhelming. And I think Michelle is smiling there that she does not wish to take that on, nor legally does she have to. So if you look at it legally, it looks at the land bank. If you look at Brownfield Authority and Parks and Recs, those functions do not fall under the clerk. They're separate entities, and the clerk office does not have to take minutes. The other committees that fall under the Board of Commissioners, the clerk office has to. So if we have a senior services committee, if we have, finance committee, those functions, those meetings, the clerk has to serve and provide minutes for them. So I think, does that answer your question?
To some degree, in regards to Parks and Rec,
Mhm.
but So I go back to the question of Laura works under the administration
Yes.
office and therefore serves the board.
Mhm.
Okay, if the commissioners are serving on the boards and they have certain requirements in their respective groups, you might say, does she not also have that responsibility to serve the commissioners and the certain
I can
capacity?
tell you the prior administrator and prior administrative assistant did not serve in that function. So I think this is, now, if you wish to put that under the job description specifically for Parks and Recs, that could be done. That's what I'm saying. Long-term, we need to come up with a solution for this because I think we're all in agreement. They need administrative oversight and they should have had it. But the way it was done, the prior administrative assistant, executive assistant did not do those duties.
Well, that may be true. However, we are looking at this
Mhm.
for Parks and Rec. So what I'm saying is that could be a problem across the boards, all the boards,
Well,
except for the ones that are mandated by the clerk.
I think the only ones that we have, well, Trudy does the land bank and brownfield. She takes all the minutes for those meetings. Parks and Recs, Laurel has been doing that lately. It wasn't the case when she was brought on. The substance abuse task force is one that we got created that she's just taking it on. It wasn't an issue, and it's not an issue. Those are the ones I can think of that are not under the umbrella of the clerk's office responsibilities for taking minutes. If we want to have a committee meeting on any of the other committees, the clerk has to provide someone from her staff to take minutes.
I guess where I'm going with this is maybe we should look at her job description, or not necessarily Laurel, but the job description. And then look at the pay for that position and determine if they have won enough time. But ensure that they're being paid for what they're being responsible for.
And actually, that's what we're starting on March 23rd.
Okay,
Yeah, so, yeah, we are in agreement with you 100% that that has to take place. Not just with that job, but several other ones on the non-union pay scale. As you remember last summer, identified several problems and issues with that pay scale.
so in changing that, land bank and brownfield, how are they structured? Are they?
They're separate entities. Well, you appoint people to, but they're legally separate entities.
Well, you said that Parks and Rec was a commission, therefore it was not the
They're separate
responsibility.
entities.
So is land bank and brownfield commissions, or,
No, they're a separate authority under state law. They were structured separately.
and the clerk is not required to take?
Correct.
So that would be another area.
Yeah,
Trudy's
Trudy-
gonna go one day. I
Yeah.
mean, it could be another 20 years down the road. Who's gonna be taking,
25 years.
who's gonna be taking minutes? So that, I would think, is your job.
By their bylaws, it's the planning department responsibility to take minutes for
Okay.
those two, and that's in their bylaws.
Okay, so,
is on that.
And she actually serves on, by the way the bylaws were structured, and I wasn't here, but I think you were, Mr. Buddick, the planner and the county administrator have designated seats on the board.
okay, so
And
are
it's the planning office responsibility to take those minutes.
there any other boards that you can think of besides parks and opioid?
Solid Waste Council, which is also handled through the planning department.
Mm.
And planning commission. By law, there's kind of a separate entity, and that's all part of their bylaws, but the planning department is responsible for those minutes.
Okay, so but it's just basically
I-
the two.
Have I missed any, Michelle?
You mentioned the road commission, which technically falls under me if
Yeah.
push came to shove.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, but they outsource that.
the BPW,
As long as
those are all me.
it's your responsibility, and then you have taken care of or communicated that it's gonna be outsourced.
Is compensated, because it does create extra hours, but if they're an hourly employee, they get compensated.
So let's just say Trudy did retire, whoever would take her place would still have
Take
those,
care of
because
those.
that's defined in their
Okay,
structure when they were organized.
Well, I might start off, I've been on Parks and Rec for almost getting close to a year and a half. We would be lost if we didn't have Laura at those meetings. She keeps us on track and she does a lot of work. With that, I'm going to move to recommend to the Leelanau County Board of Commissioners that we give a one-time stipend of $2,000 to Administrative Assistant Paul Evans for the work and services last 2 years on Parks and Rec.
I'll support.
Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate all this dialogue on this. I just wanted to share the other side of this concern that I have. I absolutely support us laying this out for future. I'm just a little concerned about backtracking because it kind of evolved into where it is today. So my concern is not because, as Rick said it very well, Laurel's been a great help to us the last couple of years, and hopefully will be in the future. But what else are we forgetting? I know we've mentioned some of these things, but we really haven't mentioned all. So are we going to really open some kind of a Pandora's box if we start saying, well, somebody's done all this work last couple of years, we should recognize them? And that's my only concern. It has nothing to do with what a great job that Laurel's done, but we have, on top of what Trudy does, and I understand some of those might be by state law, but Planning Commission and Brownfield and Land Bank and Solid Waste Council and Housing Action. And then in the past, she's helped with interviewing employees with Chet. We've got Rob, who's been doing, I think it's Rob, who's been doing overlay districts, extra work for us. And I just feel like it's messy. So I don't want to support the 2,000 for pass just because of that reason. I think it's messy, not because it hasn't been fantastic and it's been a great help to us. But that's the only reason that I'm glad it's separated. The two issues are separated, but this one I don't support.
And I appreciate Commissioner Lautner's comments. I think the big problem here is Laurel is doing a job that she's not being compensated for. That's the bottom line. She's not being paid for all the stuff that she is doing on behalf of the county. And that's where I was coming from. Also, is that it's not that Laurel doesn't deserve the $2,000. She surely does. But what she really deserves is to have her job, not her, but her job assessed and to be paid for what she's really doing. And that's not the case right now. And that's unfortunate. And I'm sure I know she's not the only one in that situation. But, it makes it very difficult because you are in a position of rewarding one person when you've got other people in the same situation. And it kind of puts us in a difficult position because we all value what the world is doing. But what we really need to do is change the job description and start paying her for what she's doing.
This discussion reminds me of our administrator's original suggestion when we started discussing HR, and that is for a part-time assistant in his office. And as we look at budget and job descriptions this summer, perhaps we should keep in mind that there are enough extra duties as we hear about all these committees that need someone to take notes. That's something to look at too, and hopefully remember that. Because obviously there's more being done than is in job descriptions, and we need to rectify that.
I guess I have a problem with it as we pick and choose people who are doing special duties. I mean, I don't know of anyone really at the county who doesn't do extra things. And I really wish that we would not pick and choose out of budget time to compensate people in different ways. I also think that I appreciate the finance, committee coming forward with something, but I think that we should wait till have the full report in order to start giving additional compensation to people. And as Commissioner Solis Little stated, she is doing things, but there are other people doing extra things as well. And so I would rather we wait to get a full report from the finance committee before we decide who we're going to compensate when. Because I don't want to come next month and there's 2 more people who have done extra things. Or there's, 5 more, and all of a sudden we should be giving them stipends. And if we don't, and we've already given them to these people, then it looks like favoritism. So I would rather wait till we have a full report and we try to do this in the budget as we normally, I would say that's what we normally do.
May I make a suggestion there? And I think it's a very good dialogue, and I think you all have valid points. We are having a budget meeting. We are looking at restructuring duties. We are looking at restructuring pay scale. At this point, I'd be willing to hold off on this, withdraw this request. Let's get the finance committee to do the big study, because we are looking at Laurel's position. We are looking at the chief deputy's positions. And one of the things that we talked about, that Mr. Robbins, you can chime in, is we need to look at those positions being potentially salary, so we don't get these type of situations. And we do need to look at duties, especially when you look at the next administrator and everything. So I think it does all tie in. So I think it would make logical sense instead of piecemealing it. And I understand that, that we could hold off. We are meeting on March 23rd. I'm guessing we're gonna have a series of meetings and recommendations. I think all of you appreciate all the work Laurel has done. And same with Darcy too. I don't want to talk about Darcy's situation, but she's been put in a very unique situation, has done a great job, been very professional. And we are talking, I had an internal meeting with the elected officials and how we're gonna treat the chief deputies positions. And I think we have a recommendation and we may be on the 23rd on that. So it does all tie in. So I think based on dialogue today and what we're gonna talk about March 23rd, and I'm sure it'll be on the April agenda, at least an update, I'd be willing to hold off on these 2 recommendations until that time, until we have the big picture.
I'll withdraw one motion.
Questions or statements?
It's a very good idea.
Yeah,
It's a very
I think
good
we're all saying the same. We just gotta look at it.
Absolutely.
We started this process in August. I wanted at least, you put the money in the budget, I wanted to at least have a dialogue on this. So I appreciate all the comments. And really, I think we're all kind of saying the same thing. We need to address these issues and look at the big picture.
So then we move on to administration, the Grand Traverse Band 2% allocation. We can do these all in one motion. Commissioner Solis Little.
Someone else just said. I'm not on the right page.
Commissioner Algar.
I move to recommend that the Leelanau County Board of Commissioners accept the 2% allocation awards from Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians as follows: Family Court, Child and Family Services, Safe Haven Program, 5,000. Senior Services, Leelanau Christian Neighbors, 20,000. Sheriff's Office, Narcotics Analyzers, 32,800. Solid Waste Council Tire Recycling Program, 10,000. Solid Waste Council Mattress Recycling Program, 6,000.
Support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The motion passes 6-0. Thank you. And that brings us then to the Veterans Memorial update.
Yeah, I just received this yesterday afternoon. I made copies and it's on your desk. You don't have an email because I literally just got this last night. So it's a proposal for the police band. Well, let me back up. This is a follow-up discussion we had last month about adding the Space Force flag to the Veterans Memorial. And I think we're all ready to do it. We want to make sure that it looks proper. Just don't want to put a flag somewhere. And Jerry suggested it could cost us up to $50,000 total, and I think he's probably pretty close. If you look, so Felicia Vanderbrink did the original design of that space, so we went back to them. Their cost, just to do the design, was $9,900, or I'm sorry, $9,900. They did take $2,000 off just for the veteran services, but still, it's $7,900 just to do the design work. So the question is, do you wish to proceed? Now, last month, you requested at least get a quote on what the design work would be. But they did say it could be, unfortunately, up to $40,000-$50,000.
Commissioner Long.
Has this been to buildings and grounds committee?
Yeah, yes, yeah.
I thought it.
Yeah, it went to they went to the whole board. You said at least
Okay.
get the cost for the engineering work, because I think all of you agree, if we're gonna do it, it needs to blend in well. We have a beautiful memorial down there. We don't want to just put a flag somewhere out there. It was designed, is this complicated? They did tell us it was designed not to add more flags to it, so it would, if you really want to make look match, it's gonna be a complicated, which means expensive project.
Well, it's gonna be moving all the flags.
Potentially.
Just adding one.
Oh.
We have,
Go ahead.
we have our American flag and then two flag poles beside our American flag before we get into our service flags.
There's Michigan and I don't,
Is there a little county? I'm sorry, I don't remember.
it might be.
Might be a little county we can.
Because instead of, I would maybe like, maybe we can kick this back to buildings and grounds. Is it possible to take one of those flag poles and make that the Space Force flag pole? If it's a Leelanau County flag, bring it in under Michigan?
Well, I can tell you, I got some calls because this was in the paper from veterans.
Right.
And the feedback was not positive. They said, let's wait till we have some veterans in the county that are members of the Space Force before we spend the money. So I said I'd pass it on to the commissioners. Mr. Carlson did an editorial piece, and I think that led to some phone calls to my office from veterans. I'm not speaking on behalf of the VFW or any veterans group. I'm just telling you that article brought some phone calls to my office.
Commissioner Elder.
I'm just struggling with spending $8,000 for a study. It may not be as good, but I bet we could all walk down there and figure it out. And it's, and it may not be Land and Architectural Digest, but if it saves the county thousands of dollars, but I would support
I
waiving.
think Commissioner Love is correct, and Jerry's not here. I believe we have a United States flag, a Michigan flag, and I believe a Leelanau County flag. I think. Is that?
That's
that
why
your memory?
I'm trying to pull up an image.
If you wish to
Yeah,
just pass it on, we can clarify that by next week.
Yeah, let's move to postpone or table or something along that line.
If you just want to pass on
We
next week,
just ignore this.
or if you don't take action.
So it's those, I mean, not
Okay.
really ignore.
Yeah,
it.
we can further.
Needs more research.
Well, the reality is you just got this here.
Right.
I mean, and I got it yesterday afternoon, late afternoon.
I'd like to just add, it's nice of Place to take the price down 2,000. We might have a retired architect who volunteer to walk over there with us someday. if we ever have to address this.
Yeah, and like I said, they're the ones that did the original design. That's what we kept it.
Yeah.
Any other questions or statements?
I would just like to say, when the building and grounds met in regards to this issue, there was a request for this. I don't think we had any idea that the cost of putting a flag up would be $50,000.
As you remember, we received a letter from the VFW asking to purchase a Space Force flag and add it there. So it's one thing to add a flag, it's another thing to spend
Right.
$40,000-$50,000.
So I appreciate the board and I appreciate Chet looking into this a little bit further. It's not something that's urgent. It's something that we can take our time and decide if we want to do it. And if we do want to do it, the cost and where it's going to be placed. So.
Right, and I'm probably keep saying ignore is the wrong word. I think that it's something that we have to consider. but I think that there is not an urgency to it.
Well, let me look at those 3 flagpoles that are there.
Yeah.
The other ones all have specific branch service, and I believe all those were sponsored by individuals, or at least partially sponsored. But if there is, for example, a Leelanau County flag, that may be an option to add a flag there instead. I mean, we can look at that.
Right. It may have to be a fundraiser for something that another
Or
golfer.
maybe the VFW wants to take this on that project,
Exactly.
because I'm sure they have no idea what the cost was.
Right.
So I can, Mr. Mikowski is the commander. I can tell him what the costs are, because I'm sure he had no idea what the cost would be.
Right. And they didn't volunteer any additional funds for it. They just would like it done.
Yeah, I don't think they have one. but that's-
How about if you just want to move it forward, I will call Mr. Mikowski and I will see what the 3 flags are up there. As you leave today, you can drive by. I think
Go
we'll
on,
see
right,
what-
but-
We can have an update next week.
Okay.
Does that make
Move it forward.
sense?
Just put it on the agenda. We don't have to have a vote on
Yeah.
it. We Just put it on the agenda.
Well,
next
I
week.
had a thing that said no action or recommendation taken at this time. But is there a motion to move it forward?
But you want to have
No
an agenda?
action, we can-
You want just an update next week?
You can do that.
Okay. I'll give an update next week.
All right, great.
Thank you.
All right, then that brings us to the American Rescue Plan Act, an update.
We talked at our last meeting, set up a special meeting. And y'all will look at the calendars. I believe last time we talked about the first part of April because several had conflicts between now and March and spring breaks coming and so forth. So we talked about actually doing it in April. At the same time, bringing Matt McCullough in here to talk about the administrative search at the same meeting. Because I think you're pretty close to the end of the ARPA fund unless we get some special funding, but so I think you could do both. And so Mr. Buddick and I talked about doing both those issues at one meeting.
I'm out of town until our meeting.
12th of
April.
oh,
So are you suggesting doing it on following our meeting in April?
no, I'm just saying pick a date, but what Mr. Buddick and I talked about is I don't think we have that much issues with ARPA funding, but it'd be a good time to talk about the type of traits and skills and pay level you want for the next administrator at that same meeting. This is what Mr. Buck and I talked about this.
Right, I thought about the first week of April. I thought everyone would be here, but I don't,
Yeah, I thought,
Following our meeting.
well,
we don't know how long it's going to be.
yeah,
I
I'm
thought
that
usually
whole week I can't do
when you
anything.
do meetings after the,
Start at 2.
you gotta remember, usually when you do after executive, you're not as focused.
Right.
And if you're really gonna talk about the traits you want in the next administrator, in a pay range or anything, I think you really need to be focused at.
Yeah.
I had that first full week of April or that full week of the 3rd week was open.
I'm open starting Wednesday the 3rd week after our meeting.
No, I'm talking 18th.
Oh, the 18th.
Yeah, I can't do anything week the 11th.
So I could do Wednesday on the 18th or Tuesday, but Tuesdays are executive board meeting.
Monday 18th?
Monday
No, that
in
will
the
not work for me.
Now when is the day of the regular meeting in April?
The
19th.
9th.
Executive is 12th.
The 9th?
And the regular.
You could do it the afternoon of the 19th because it'd be first on the agenda and usually the regular meetings go pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So you could do it the afternoon based on your schedules, if that would work.
I'm gonna be out of town that weekend, but I'm returning Monday
So that would.
On the
Tuesday would
19th?
work.
on the 18th.
But you'll be in
But
town.
if there's a snafu,
Take it a couple hours.
Yeah, I think if you started
Maybe
the,
in like at 4:30.
well, I was thinking 3 o'clock. Because I think you really need to have honest discussion on the skills and traits you want your next administrator, and also the pay range you want. If you did that and do the ARPA, because you did say you make some decisions on ARPA funding. And maybe there'd be some updates too on some federal state funding too. So I was thinking 3 o'clock give you a nice break, we can bring in some pizza or some lunches before the 7 o'clock meeting.
That works for me, for my schedule.
But I think at 3 o'clock should be able to get through everything. I agree.
I would say this is 3 hours.
Yeah.
You said that's not when the airport meeting is it? That's on 26, isn't it?
26th.
Okay, that works for me. Sure.
Could work for me, but
Hopefully.
if not, it may not, so just saying.
Okay, April 19th at
Hopefully by afternoon.
3 p.m.
Yes,
And this will be a special meeting, right?
yes.
Right. All right, I think,
Special meeting or just a workshop meeting?
well, it's up to you, because you talk about ARPA, that you want your ARPA meetings to be special meetings from now forward, so.
All right.
And by then we'll have the finance meeting, so in your request about all our funding, we'll have all that prepared by the 19th. It doesn't mean it's taking any action on the 19th, but you have that option. So April 19th at 3 p.m. and followed by the rec meeting at 7 p.m. What a break in between.
Anything else? All right, then we do move on to the lower level estimate. cost.
Yeah, I literally got this last night and I made copies this morning. You have a proposal there from John Richards, the architect, and I don't have it somewhere on my desk here. Yeah, yes, thank you. So he actually sent this to me at 9:18 last night, but it's a proposal, it's a follow-up our discussion on moving the environmental health to the lower level in the room across from the conservation district. He talked with his architectural firm, and this is a draft contract, obviously. It's a standard architectural firm, but they're talking about $5,000 to design. And the cost of the building or the space, if we were to go forward, they're estimated at $489,288. It's in the yellow on the back page. I know
5,000 to design.
that's what their proposal is,
Interesting. Huh?
which is less than, but
Less
it's a
than
simpler,
flagpole.
yeah,
Yes.
but you have to remember, the building now is already basically designed in terms
That's
of the cooling. Aspect. So I know you just got this. If you want to just move it forward to next Tuesday, have a discussion, whether you want to spend the 8,000 or whether you want to spend the $5,000 or not, knowing that it's going to cost $489,000 approximately. And it'll cost going up, that's just the rest of it.
Where would that money come?
It's supposed to come out of the ARPA funds. That's what we're thinking.
Well, it'd be up to the summer.
I've never assumed that.
Oh, that's okay.
I'm
That's
just wondering what the
started
other
to
options are.
Well, the other
because-
option is you do an allocation every year to the health department. The way we did it with the conservation district is we reduced their annual allocation because part of their money goes to pay rent and utilities, everything. So the conservation, we reduced that cost, came up with a formula where we put the money up front, reduced their annual stipend, I'll call it, over a period of years until it got paid back. And we never did raise the stipend back up because we have annual costs. So I think that's what you do it. I mean, it's up to some of you if you wish to do it, where the money's gonna come from.
Mr. Chairman,
Whether you want to go forward with this or not.
Go ahead, Commissioner Watson.
yes, I think we should move that to the April 19 meeting when we have our special meeting on ARPA and talk about that versus what other options might be talked about that day.
I actually was thinking the same thing, the only thing is getting the, I suppose it just does how quick does the health department want to have a new location? Because if we move it along a whole month away or a month and a half, it just delays construction if we're going to do it a month and a half more.
And I'm on the health board. Does their lease expire 2023 at the end of 2023?
I believe so.
Is that, I think in December of 2023.
Right, so I think we have the time, and
Yeah.
and I always considered this as part of the ARPA fund, so I would agree with Commissioner Wetzel that we would just put this on the agenda for April 19th. And make a decision about that. Commissioner Rush.
One of my questions is, what's the timeline for the return on the investment?
Well, it depends on how you would structure the payments. Yeah,
Right.
Yeah. Now, if it's, I guess we'd have to have a discussion with the health department to see what their current payment is. How much of that is going towards that rental space, how much is going to heat and utilities? Because that would be a whitewash, I would think.
Right.
I would think, just like with the conservation district, you would calculate that into the formula, how much money you allocate.
I think we should put some thought into that for our discussion.
If you wish to wait till April 19th, I can at least talk to Dodie at the health department and get some numbers. I have no idea how their lease is structured, what they pay. So
Yeah.
we can do that prior to April 19th.
Well, but they wouldn't actually get any less rent or anything, because they wouldn't downsize there. They're just gonna use the space more, so I don't know that they're gonna have a savings,
Yeah.
other than they can't. He doesn't even have an office there.
Yeah, I don't know how they're structured, so. And I know the Montessori would like to expand and use some of their space there, so that's another factor there.
So I support doing it in April as well, but I'd like to know what other funding options we have. Because we have so many dire needs in this county for those ARPA funds could address that we would normally not take out of our budget. So I just like to know what
Well,
funding options do we have?
Yeah, well, our finance committee is meeting on the 23rd of March. We're gonna review all the funding. Jen gives just a brief overview last week, I believe. But that's gonna happen on the March 23rd meeting. Let's go review how much is in our general fund, DPR fund, ARPA funds, all that stuff. So you'll have a better update.
That's what I was gonna say, is if we, between now and the 19th, which I support that as well. If our finance director could look at what options are presented to the finance committee, so you have some things to look at.
Well, that was the plan to do it at the executive meeting on the, to give a finance committee update on the April executive. Committee. So you'd have that information.
Good.
So if you just
Good.
wish not to take any action and move on, I'll try to do some background work. Finance committee is meeting, try to give you an update in April.
Any questions with that? No, I think that's a good approach. All right, then that brings us to Administrator and Human Resources Director duties and responsibilities review.
Yeah, this was tabled last month. Well, I won't go with the whole history. As you know, in your 2022 budget, you have new positions for finance director and HR, human resources. The finance director position has been filled. The HR position has been posted. Interviews have been ongoing. At last meeting, Commissioner Wessel brought up the thing about we need a grant writer position. And with all this federal state money coming forward, I think there's some merit to that, but at this point, and I talked to Commissioner Wessel about that. I think we have opportunity to enter in a partnership for grant writer as a contracted basis. I've been in dialogue with Networks Northwest, and at least verbally, they think it could work out. They have done this before with units of government. So what I'm thinking, what we need, someone to be our eyes and ears with all this federal money coming forward, and state money coming forward, broadband money. If you remember in Washington, these billions of dollars just gets overwhelming when they start talking. But at this point now, for federal level and the state level, there is no set process in place. There are no deadlines. There's no guidelines yet. Some are saying these are going to be grants. Some are saying these are allocations. And so we don't have anybody on staff that has that expertise, with the exception of probably Trudy Gala, who I don't want to give her any more duties or responsibilities. So at least what I think makes sense is that we further explore possibly enter a contract with Networks Northwest for grant writer on a contract basis versus a county employee. And Matt, the director, said he's looking at that as we speak. He's gonna come up with a proposal at some point. I met with him the last 2 weeks about that. And he thought it makes sense. He actually has done this. Their organization has done this in the past for different units of government. And he actually has a company in mind that he thinks may be a good fit for us. To basically look at all the federal and state options for funding and make sure we're ready and prepared. Because some of this money may be coming quickly, especially if you look at the broadband, you look at that $5 million that we committed. If it's in a grant proposal, I mean, we have the system in place. We know what we want to do. It's just meeting all the deadlines, all the technical guidelines. As you remember, for those of you that's on Park and Rec, even applying for the state Parks and Recs money, there's a very technical process, and you hired a consultant to help with that. So I kind of saying the same thing. Instead of having an employee on staff, have it on a contracted basis as needed for these grants. Mr. Russell, I think you thought that made logical sense.
Yeah, I think we have a need for both probably, but I think Networks Northwest has a capacity to help us with the state funding and the federal funding, especially for the rescue dollars. I was also talking though about the need for somebody to be in the county to locate and track and report on the smaller grants that are available from foundations and nonprofits. But going with Networks Northwest is a huge step forward, and I support that.
No, I don't have a proposal for you or anything. I'm just bringing up the concept.
Yes, I know we've used them for different things, whether it's for, 5-year plans or, so I think they do have some very good people on.
Yeah, and as Mr. Russell said, I focus on the ARPA funds, but it'd be general. I mean, if there's a Parks and Recs grant out there that we may be eligible for, the same person would be able to do that on our behalf. But I know the next couple of months, there's gonna be a lot of federal and state money coming forward at some point.
Mr. Rush.
A lot of times in these grants, or maybe all the time in these grants, they have stipends available. So when we're contracting, outsourcing this, I like the idea of outsourcing it. It gives us better control. But if we're contracting, what happens to the stipend in the grant? Does that also go to the contractor?
And I don't want to speak on behalf of Networks Northwest. They are not in favor of stipends for their grant writers, because most of them are probably employed by.
I raised the issue because there needs to be a discussion in that in regards to what that contract.
If we get to that point, that would be in the contract. There are individuals, and as you said, it's perfectly legitimate grants. There's administrative costs you can recoup. And so if we're fortunate to get a major federal state grant, the amount of money we would pay for Networks Northwest would be recouped by the county in almost every one of those grants. Even with ARPA money, there's a provision in there that we could actually spend, figure out what percentage of that money on administrative overhead. Not that we're talking about doing that, but in theory, we could say we spent 5% of 4.2 on administrative overhead, and that would be a legitimate expense. Now, since we're under 10 million, we don't have to even worry about that, but that is a legitimate expenditure. So if we're successful, I think we could recoup our costs there.
Mr. Soto.
I would, and you're probably already thinking about this, but in your discussions with Matt and Holly, Commissioner Wessel brings a good point, and that this right now is looking at it grant specifics, and they would have it attuned to anything coming through on a federal basis or state as well. There are a lot of little grants out there. If it's possible for them, for the contractual arrangements to have them have eyes on opportunities.
Yeah, we actually talked about that. I just focus on the federal and state because that would be our priority. But yeah, every year Rotary has grants, Schmucker Foundation, Deer Foundation, they all have cycles, Olson Foundation, they all have cycles that we could in theory apply for too. But obviously the main focus, I think, the next couple of years is gonna be the federal and state money that's there. It just has to be allocated.
No,
But that would not prevent them from any local grants.
I know, I just meant making sure that they know that what we are looking for is also someone who's familiar enough with what goes on in our county, that
Yes.
they are seeking other opportunities that are not major, but would be useful. So, and maybe there's a way to get our county directors to have a look at that eye, from that direction of letting them know needs that this person could be seeking grants for.
So I'm saying, in my vision of this person will be looking out for all grants. They would notify the administrator and says, hey, this grant is available. Deadline is June 30th. Are you as a county interested in applying for it? Or vice versa, if we hear about a grant, we would notify that person and see if it makes sense.
Or we have a need.
Yeah.
Is there a grant to fit this?
So are we assuming that we're gonna move forward on this?
Well, I don't have a proposal. I'm just giving you an update because we had a dialogue last month about the grant writer. position. So I'm just telling you, from my perspective, I think this would be a much better move than hiring an individual to be a grant writer for the county, either on a part-time or full-time basis. I don't think, with the exception of Trudy, which I think you all agree, we don't want to add her any burden. We don't have people, to write like the 2% grants, a lot of people do that. That's fairly simple. I'm talking about the more complicated grants.
So do we need a proposal?
Well, I'm working on it. At some point, if I have one, I'll
So
bring
you're
it
working
forward.
on it?
Yeah, I'm just giving, this is just an update. And then on the HR, I guess I'm looking for guidance how to proceed. The job was posted. We did interview some candidates. None of them have grant writing experience. That's not their expertise. What I said last month is that we start the process, but I would not make a decision until you determine, because last month you had dialogue whether it should be a half-time or full-time position or how to proceed. So I guess I'm looking for guidance because it does tie in to the finance position. And if we're going to separate those duties, create these new departments, we need to have that piece of the puzzle resolved because the two are closely linked in terms of benefits and who does what and everything. So we're kind of on a standstill here until we know how you wish to proceed with that finance, or I mean with the HR position.
Patricia can go first. I'm not sure. I looked down and her hand was up too, so now
No, I was just going to ask if, timing on this. The 19th, we're going to discuss what we see as qualities and the attributes that we want in our next administrator. And don't we want to do that before we actually conclude interviewing for this position? Because I think it would impact if we're looking for strong HR skills or depending on what we're looking for, and we haven't decided that. So we could hire somebody that is not going to be a very good fit if we don't make that decision first. And so I'm just wondering if we should put this off until we have our meeting on the 19th of April and have a discussion on what we're looking for in terms of the administrator to be sure that it's going to be a good fit and that we utilize both the skills of both people. Just a thought.
And we had a vote at our last meeting to make this part-time, and I understand that there was something wrong with the vote. I think we did that vote for a good reason. In my mind, I still haven't heard that we have enough work to do for a full-time person. I've never heard the justifications to spend taxpayer money in that way, starting now for the next 100 years. So I would agree with Commissioner Soda's little point too, that I think we need to know what we're doing as far as hiring an administrator and what that administrator perceives a need for. So I think that we're acting precipitously. Perhaps we should revisit a decision we made, maybe incorrectly, and move this forward to next month, next week to just be more careful how we commit taxpayer money in this way.
From a strictly technical standpoint, let me explain what happened last week or last month. You did vote at the executive committee, but Mr. Robbins brought up correctly that if you want to to reconsider a decision made, it takes a 2/3 majority for reconsideration. And so that's gonna be brought up next week. And Mr. Bunnick agreed that that should have happened. It slipped by, I think, everybody here. But at that meeting, it was, everyone said, let's just wait, hold off till the April meeting. So that's why we're here. So you did pass a motion. It's in the budget. To change that, you have to reconsider it by a 2/3 majority and then open it up for discussion. Is that correct, Mr. Bunnick? Is that
Correct. Well, and it was discussed only in the executive
Yeah.
commission meeting. It was actually taken off the agenda in the regular
Yeah.
meeting. So there was no real vote on
Yeah.
it. That was votes, are just recommendations.
For the majority wish to take it off the March meeting, so that's why it's back on the April. And I think you agreed that you wanted that on the April agenda, so that's why it's back on the agenda.
Commissioner Walker.
So, as you're saying, it's on April.
I'm sorry, the March. This is March.
Okay, thank
I'm
you.
sorry, this is March meeting.
I don't know.
It was February.
Yeah,
and-
thank you. So, all
yeah,
right.
March, I apologize.
So I don't know if you're looking for a motion or consensus, but we put it in the budget, we approve the position, we have the job description. You have interviewed.
Yeah, this, as you know, and I'm going, it was very controversial, it's very emotional. Everything's on a standstill until you as a board decide how you wish to go forward with this HR position. It's my job to implement the decisions of the board. It's in your budget. You did pass a resolution in November to go forward. The job was posted. We are interviewing candidates. I certainly don't want to hire someone and then have you make a change halfway through. Out of fairness to those people, and out of fairness, we are really at a kind of a standstill with the transition of the HR and finance departments until we fill that big piece of the puzzle on HR. Because the two are linked. And I can't really go forward, and we're all kind of on a standstill with this transition until I know exactly how to go forward with the HR position.
So to finish my thought, thank you for that, are you looking for then a consensus, Mr. Chairman? Because as I said, we've already interviewed, we're to that point. And unless we're gonna go back and rewrite that job description and start all over again, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't just perhaps get a consensus of the board, or do you even need that? I mean, you have what you need, I think, to hire,
Once
and I
again, from
understand
a
what you're saying.
legal perspective, no action means you wish to proceed with a full-time HR position.
Kind of, and I would say, do that.
Commissioner Walker.
It's my understanding, we made this job description back in December, it was posted, people applied, he did the finance, and a week later or two, he was gonna start the process. And then we got caught up into this grant writing, which there was no motion to reconsider. We spent a month on that, and here we are, and we started in December. This job was gonna be filled, I was told probably by the end of January. And they're already shooting in the end of March. And yeah, he's already started the interviews again. It's time we move forward, people. This has been going on long enough. We have it in the budget. You know, Chet's already made where the office is gonna be. It's time to move forward.
Commissioner Solis.
And I'm not saying we don't move forward. What I'm saying is, we have a date that we're going to define the attributes we want in a new county administrator. And if I were that person, I would want, number one, to pick this person, but that's not possible. But I think at the very least, we can make sure that this is a compatible decision that is going to fit and work to the best. I don't know, I don't think anybody on this board has consensus right yet as to who we're looking for and what type of benefits we have. So that's still March, or excuse me, April, or March, April. It would be before our evening meeting. So I'm just saying, let's have that discussion, and then if you want to put it on the board at the evening meeting, that's fine. But let's not make a decision today until we have that discussion. That's not really moving it out there very far.
Jen, how long have you been here? 10 years?
It will be 10 years.
10 years. And correct me if I'm wrong, but are you not one of the longest serving administrators for the counties in Michigan?
Yes, no,
Okay.
yes, it's going by quickly. If you look at a
Yes.
line, I can't speak below Claire.
Okay,
If you
well,
go
that's
from
fine.
Claire to the UP, I think I'm number 2 or 3.
One of the longest serving administrators. And if I recall, you said that was very unusual.
The average in the state now is 3 to 4 years.
Okay. And it is for that reason that I do not want an administrator administering the HR part for our county. The Board of Commissioners should have the opportunity to hire an independent HR person that may stay a lot longer than 2 years or 3 years as an administrator. An HR person, to me, is somebody who connects with the people they serve long-term. Now, there's always a chance that that person may move on. However, the turnover, I would guess, could be much greater with an administrator. As you well know, the administrator is put on the hot seat. And some administrators can handle the hot seat, a lot of them can't. As my fellow commissioners has said, this has been decided. There's been monkey wrenches, you might say, thrown into the process. And it's been decided. Everything is in place, get the job done. That's my position.
I would like to add, I understand where you're coming from, maybe the next administrator should choose. But we have the best guy right here to pick. He knows what we need. The new guy, or the gal, whoever we hire, he or she doesn't know what we really need. But this guy right here is a perfect fit. And it's kind of a slap in his face by putting a roadblock on, saying we're not moving forward. So I mean, it's time to, we have the best person right here. He's already started the process. Let's move forward. Let's get this thing going.
So seeing none, then we'll move on to financials.
I think you yourself, do you want to weigh in and give our administrator any direction, or is it clear to our administrator today that there is no consensus to reconsider this motion and that he should move forward with hiring this position?
No, I don't need to. I think I've talked to him about it several times.
Well, what I've told many of you is, unless you made a change, I will fill this position by the end of the month.
Okay.
That's why we started the interview process. Out of fairness to the people that apply too,
Absolutely.
they've been waiting, so.
Okay.
Right.
Any other questions? So then we have review of financials. Commissioner Lund.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to ask Gary and Jerry about these when they were in here, but it's slipped my mind, but hi, Jen. Hi. On page, in just regular claims and accounts, on page 5, we have Kendall light bulbs. Yeah,
Yeah, we're moving the LED.
$120 a light bulb. Can you tell me about them? That's why I've been.
Just that, yep, they are slow to turn on and last forever. That's all I know. We're slowly integrating into LED.
And you know what he's about,
I'm pretty sure,
I was just curious.
I thought he wrote down.
Yes, they're.
Yeah.
I saw.
Yeah, They are the large ones.
Are they for outside or inside, do you
I
recall?
believe they're inside.
I thought maybe this might be the gymnasium, but I didn't know if they're big.
Yeah, it just says that he's putting them at the jail, so he's switching them out right now at the jail. It just says switchable, it is a pack of 2. So,
You might be, are you on page 11 or page, there was some.
I actually pulled the invoices.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, like page 11, there were others, I think they were like $40 a light bulb, also LEDs, so I get the whole LED thing.
Yeah, this says these are 4,000 by 5,000, 6,000, 35, 40, 50K switchable.
And the ones that are like 8 foot, did I read that right? It's very, I think I looked at 11, I think it was also Kendall, but are they 8 foot long LEDs?
That I'd have to ask, because they're both Kendall invoices, right?
I think so.
Yeah, I'd have to ask Jerry. I don't know where, unless Kathy went and looked these up purposely. It doesn't say anything on here about how long they are, but we can,
Okay.
I can get that from Jerry, sure.
I know
This was very interesting.
Gary did show me them, and they are not the standard size, they're pretty large.
Pretty big.
And they're
yeah.
supposed to last for how long?
It's both made sense. If they're $120, they're gotta be big. That makes sense for the jail, the gymnasium. But if they're 8 foot long, that also makes sense for the gymnasium. So I would just.
Yeah, I'm not sure unless she looked them up. That's not on the description, so I can ask.
Super.
And there are 8-foot fluorescents, so that's what they would be
Yeah.
replacing.
8 foot fluorescents.
Yeah.
Okay.
Less cost too, I believe. Or,
For the, on the energy side, yes.
Supposedly, yeah.
Supposedly.
They do last.
yeah,
Which is more, well, they don't in a barn, I can tell you that. They get cold.
Cold.
COVID?
Cold,
Yes.
cold.
Oh.
That's okay.
All right, and then, and more out of curiosity, on page 9, you had an A-bank key, I think it was marine training.
Yeah, right now we have gone ahead and they're looking at, possibly hiring, so it's just, getting that person signed up. And so I believe that is a relative of the son of the detective who's looking to become a marine deputy.
Very cool, I thought that was very cool. If that's 2 and 2 I put together.
Yep.
Very.
You send them to training first.
Send training first down to Ottawa.
See,
County.
yes, way down there. Yeah, it used to be in Clare. It was, and we'd send everybody. So this time I think Jim's sending this one for sure.
Oh, no.
Well, he has to sign on first, but we
Sure.
have to pay for the training.
No, we pay for the
Yeah.
First.
Yes.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Well, since Jen is here, I do want to compliment her because, you know, Sarah's on medical leave, maternity leave, and trying to wrap up the budget year. And audit starts
Next Monday.
next Monday here. So we're trying to get everything ready and do this transition. So it's been a little stressful for her at times, but I just want to say publicly that we appreciate all your efforts.
Thank you.
For sure. Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions? Then we move on. Any special reports? How about, then that brings us then to public comment. Is there any public comment?
Name's Bill Wiesner, Elmwood Township. And next time I'm gonna get here 5 or 10 minutes earlier too, because then I won't have to wait this long. But the handout going around is just this one here. And it's a request for discussion and research by the board and the county clerk. I talked to her. She was very kind to give me about 20 minutes yesterday or the day before. And the question is to replace the Dominion software machines with paper ballots that are local, secure, and easily auditable. Abraham Lincoln, way back in the Gettysburg Address, said, "This is a country ruled of the people, by the people, and for the people." You mentioned the Veterans Memorial here. It was discussed. That was a war against fascism and rule by a centralized government, which didn't have the welfare of the people involved. 90%, this is showing votes switched during the 2020 election. 90%, according to the website here, of the votes were switched, and the switch came out of China. So this whole front page is frankspeech.com, websites here. I plan to send you all an email of this too. And then up in the menu, it says fix 2020 first. And then you go one more of the drop-down boxes, state by state results. And you're given two options. And this is the window that comes up here. It's a little hard to see. It's real hard to see. It says the big picture here on the left and by state. So these three photos are the big picture. And you'll see the lie, I think they call it, is that Biden ended up with 7 million votes more. And you can see the states reflected in that too. The truth, Trump had 6 million votes more, and you can see the states reflected there. The overall picture, we just discussed it. That's this picture. Okay, and then I forgot, or I didn't have time to put in by state, but by state, it'll show you every county in Michigan. Way on the left, it will show where the steels or the switches, which country they originated in. And way over on the right, it will show you how many votes were flipped. And the votes always flipped from Trump to Biden. In Leelanau County, 1,400 votes were flipped according to this analysis. This was done by white hat hackers, good guys that got in. If the bad guys could get in to switch the votes, the good guys could get in and observe it. So that's what happened. So that's what you'll see if you go to by state. You can see Leelanau County, any county in Michigan. It would have flipped the result of Leelanau County to the 1,400 votes that were switched. And then here is just if you go to the website's it's the Absolute series. I'd suggest watching Scientific Proof. That's by Douglas G. Frank, and he shows exactly how the votes were flipped. And then watch the short Absolute Proof, the picture with Mike Lindell here. It's only 30 minutes long, shows how all the votes were switched. On the backside, the top left picture is of Eric Coomer. He's the security guy for Dominion software machines, which according to Michelle, when I talked to her, she said up to 70% of the machines in Michigan are Dominion. And I've just written here, Eric Coomer, the security guy and patent holder for the Dominion voting machines education. I don't know if I spelled that right, software, where they adjudicate things and can decide how the vote was supposed to go. Here he's lying to a policeman. I don't say that lightly because they've got him. He was lying to a policeman about running his car into the building. Here you see him looking down. Now, by the way, I'm almost out of time here. He was talking in an Antifa conversation. He says he wasn't on it, but on that conversation, somebody said, what if effing Trump wins this election? And he said, don't worry about effing Trump winning the election. He's not going to win the election. I made sure that that's not going to happen. Here, if you go to that link, you'll see him lying to the police 3 times. Here's just suggestions for voting in a better way. And every person in Leelanau County. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll send you all an email. Thank you.
Okay, Charles Knapp, Cleveland Township.
I would like to make a comment about this Veterans Center. Number one, why do we need to have somebody design a Space Force flag? As far as I know, Congress already stupidly established this separate force, which really should have just gone to the Navy, in my opinion. So if it's a separate force, it'll have its own flag that's congressionally approved. Why do we have to have one designed? That'd be the first step. We don't need to spend that $9,000 on a consultant to do that. And number two, I think Gwen's idea is a good idea. We could simply move the Leelanau County flag over underneath the state of Michigan flag, put the Space Force flag on that pole. Problem solved, $50,000 saved. So until that came up, I was really just going to kind of sit here and hope we didn't get into HR person's requirements about grantsmanship again, like we did the last time. till 2:30 in the afternoon. So I just wanted to drop that in. Why do we need to have somebody design a spaceport flag for Leelanau County? They'll have their own if they're congressionally established separate military force. Every other military force has one. Okay, thank you much.
Any commissioner comments?
Check everybody answered. I got a phone call this morning. Where are we at? Are we still talking about the juvenile next door? A couple months ago.
Yeah, actually, on the April agenda, I'm gonna put all your 2022 goals on there as one of the goals. Had some discussions, as I understand, I've been a part of it, between the courts and the sheriff. There's no question there's a need for juvenile system. The sheriff was not in favor of looking at our facilities.
Okay, the reason I asked is because it came up this morning down in Kalamazoo County. We probably won't have a problem up here, but right now, you know, with 17-year-old commits an armed robbery, they either go to juvenile detention until they have their court date, or they let them loose and they don't have room to put them. So you got people that commit armed robbery, 17-year-olds that are going back home. Grand Traverse just sent one to Wisconsin.
According to Mr. Povolo, it is an issue in Northern Michigan. It's a major issue.
Two things. One, I want to clarify something that I heard in public comment in regards to the space flag. We are not designing a space flag. There is one designed, I believe. We were looking at redesigning our veterans memorial to include a space flag. That now, number two, this is a service announcement. Mamma Mia musical, Traverse City West Senior High, this weekend and next weekend. Tickets start at $15. Please call and get your tickets. I hear it's a wonderful performance.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Sunday has a 2 o'clock matinee.
There you go, both weekends.
If I can rush into the code, do we get a discount?
I wish.
Commissioner Elder.
I'd just like to clarify that it was Commissioner Lochner who suggested we just use the poll we have. It's a good idea. It was my idea that we just all walk down and figure it out ourselves instead of things an architect. Versus more.
Want to keep the news straight, right?
I want to keep, yeah, you know, credit where credit
We
is
have
due.
3. We're going on February, so.
Credit is credit where credit is due.
I just want to thank our administrator for this really good picture. Thank you.
It only almost cost me extra money because my suitcase was too heavy when I brought it back up. It was great going there. But that's a small percentage of what I brought back. I lost in my office. So really, I passed a lot of stuff out to staff already. So when I weighed it, it was 49.7 pounds. It's 50 pounds limit. I was a great chip going there, but coming back.
The secret to that is you open up that suitcase and you take something out. put it in your
Well, I
pocket.
was prepared. I was almost there. Thank you. I didn't have weight in my room. I was looking, I go, oh my God, this is really heavy.
Well, thank you for thinking of us.
So I'd like to add that very kind to us because I brought a stack home about 2.5 inches. Oh, and I thought that's what he was going to give us. So he's being kind to us.
Any other comments? Commissioner Wessel, did you have any comments? No, all right, thank you. And that brings us to approval of financials. Commissioner Wagner.
I would recommend approval of claims and accounts, $139,556.95. Support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion passes 6-0.
Recommend approval of post audit, $2,307,624.53. Support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Motion passes 6-0.